I'm saying that V10 is still hard to get to, right? Like,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It really is.
just because we are seeing all this, new stuff in the highest end, and the highest end's getting stretched more, the whole thing of climbing isn't getting diluted. What I'm kind of realizing is that climbing is so young in its sport. Because it's so complex, it kind of requires steepage, and it requires time, and it requires new takes and like new opinions.
All right. Tim, my dude, how's it going, man?
Good morning. Things are going phenomenally, Josh.
Phenomenally. Okay. I don't know what answer I'm expecting there. Tim, I just took a cold shower to get especially
Ooh.
hyped for the podcast. Do you ever do those, man? Do you have a
Yeah, I
cold
used
shower
to a
enough?
lot. Yeah. We have a cold pool, but I don't go in. Michaela goes in. She cold plunges all the time.
Like you're like you don't have a cold pool, you just have a pool that's not heated, which becomes a cold pool. Like that's not like one of those super expensive things that people buy to do actual cold plunges. You're just yeah.
No. Yeah, we found out like cold plunge temperatures are like far lower than our pool, which is kind of insane because the pool in the shade and in the winter is super cold. Like I mean, yeah, there's no heating, but there's no sun on it like a lot of time because in the backyard. So it gets freezing, and then you figure out cold plunges are like closer to like 0 degrees sometimes, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean I have seen some of the research that says if it's not super cold, you can stay in
Mm.
there for longer, and it's just about like eliciting that response. I don't want to geek out on cold plunging right now, Tim. I took a cold
I've only
shower,
read good things.
and
I've only
here I
read
am.
good things.
Yeah,
Nice. Sick. You
I
feel
got
good?
cold showers. I got hot coffee, and I'm psyched. And yeah, dude, what a banger start to 2024. It's just been hard climbing, just amazing sends. You know, I mean, we've had some of them on the podcast, but just lots of hard climbing. And here on the West Coast, which is really on the West Coast of America, just lots of hard climbing going down. And I remember when I was younger and there was less climbing media, I would literally be refreshing 8A, like waiting to see if, someone had repeated lucid dreaming or something like this, or the swarm. It was just, and now I just get straight into my feed hardcore. But you're out there seeing it too, man. So yeah, how's it going in Vegas? You've been seeing some hard climbing out there too, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's funny because I guess I don't like spray about it, and I think I used to Instagram,
Now's your chance. Now's your chance,
significantly
Tim.
more.
Spray it
Yeah.
up, dude.
I never want to spray about it either. It's for me, I guess like my personal values, I never really see it as like, wow, that's so cool. Because these people are a lot of them are my friends. And a lot of them are my friends in a way that like we've grown up together, and like the thing that we do is just a thing that we do. And we don't need to like glorify it. But it's been pretty cool. Like in hindsight, we have this Norwegian couple who's been staying at our place for like probably the last 3 weeks. They were just gone for like a week, but they were here and in our area for like 3-4 weeks, and they're in the States for like 3 months, and the dude is just sending like everything here. He's super strong,
Wait,
and I
how
just
did you end up with a Norwegian couple in your like?
I
Are you
know.
couch surfing? Are you an Airbnb now? What do you mean you have a Norwegian couple in your house?
I was out at Reflecting Pool with the kids that I had here, Vale, Will, and Abram, who were all strong, and we just showed up, and there was only one other crew trying it, and it was this guy Tio and Anna, and you just hop into conversation in climbing areas with people you don't know, especially if you're like, I find this especially if you guys are serious. Like if you're not just like there hanging out and stuff, but if you're there actually trying climbs, you end up talking immediately, and you end up being friends like immediately. And I don't know, it just happens to me. Like it's a huge problem that I have actually. Like I think since September I've had
You
probably,
just people just come into your house.
yeah, I've had over 30 people stay here since September. Like
Oh my
it's
god, you
ridiculous.
should be an
It's not
Airbnb.
good. Huge apologies to my girlfriend. But I can't help it. I can't help but just like make friends and like bring people together. It definitely is worse because like like I said, end up not really going out as much because I need time for myself. But all that's being said, there's a lot of hard climbing energy kind of around me all the time. And Nate Williams, Big Twig, he's the guy who's been trying sieging Return of the Sleepwalker. He's a very close friend of mine. He's been staying at my house like most of the time he stays here and comes around, and we end up just talking a lot. I mean, we talk about Sleepwalker more than I watch him try it, but I probably watched him try from the bottom of Return into like he climbs the entire thing until the Sleepwalker crux. I've probably seen that like 10 times now, over the course of 3 or 4 sessions, 5 sessions. And so especially before I hurt my knee in like November and October, I was trying Sleepwalker quite a bit. And so just being there and like climbing on it, getting my personal feel and my personal take on like what harder climbing kind of is like. Cause, I grew up a lot competing and grew up a lot climbing in the gyms, almost avoiding actually going outside because it would take more time or like give me less access to a wider variety of climbing. And I cared a lot more about like my state of climbing rather than getting accolades done. But there is something to be said about watching people just go for it. Like it's all actually, I felt like season to season was always like that. Like every time the winter started to come around, you were just like waiting to see people send, and like you knew every year someone was going to be stronger or better or more people were going to go outside. But you've been kind of mentioning that there's this like different wave, and I totally agree. Watching like the Seans go around, watching like even the Owen Whaley drop that mellow clip, like Noah Wheeler was just here and we were just hanging out for a while and talking. And like while I was talking to Noah Wheeler, watching him absolutely cruise Sleepwalker, there was like 15 other people probably in Black Velvet. Just,
Wow.
like Taylor McNeil was there. He just did that About and Left project, which was cool. Like,
Oh,
and I
what?
was watching, dude, I walked up, like,
Oh, cool.
brought the two kids to Natasha's Highball, and I was just hanging out with Taylor and just talking to him. And he was just he was rebuilding this landing like the entire time. And then like 3 days later, I see a picture of him sending it. And I'm like, that is just so cool. It's just happening. It's all happening live. These people just like make their lives around this stuff. And,
Uh,
obviously I'm also a professional climber and I do it too, but
Yeah,
it's cool to
yeah.
watch.
I wish you were in the mix, not just having to spot, but at least you're out there. I think it's still infectious. Somehow that keeps that psych high too. And I was joking about how I wanted to just hear you spray, just let you spray, Tim. But I I just want to put like a different slant on this where there is an ethic, there's an old school ethic about not spraying, and I get it. And I was talking with Keenan about this, but there's an element of living vicariously that yes, as someone who is busy, who can't get out as much as I'd like, and maybe can't climb V16 or 17 or 15 or 14, really, it's just fun to get to hear that, like, and I think that there's something always I can learn. And I don't know, I always say that it's easy to admire, or it's easy to spot excellence, and when you see someone doing something incredible, it's inspiring, whether it's in surfing or climbing. And so I just want to give you more license to spray, and maybe it's gratuitous, but also I don't know, man, I just love it. Like, I want to hear about badass people climbing it and getting to transport to Black Velvet, which is just quite the area and the mecca for hard climbing in Red Rocks, and just hear about all these people on this session. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And if, I guess transport me back there again, and tell me what it's like seeing all of these people sieging V16 and up. Like, what's the vibe like? What's the conversations like? What's it like seeing the best, and how do they do things differently compared to guys like me?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's a great, multi-layered question. But I want to comment on something you were just talking about. When I was living in the Bay Area, actually, that's when I started to post a lot more and like share a lot more on my Instagram, because most of my followers were people who were strong climbers, but like probably more people like you, had like real jobs and worked a lot and like climbed hard, but like couldn't climb harder. They didn't have a means to, or and they didn't have the time to, or they didn't spend that time because they were spending time doing other things and making money, like just doing all sorts of other things. And I spoke a lot, and I had a deep desire to chase excellence in climbing. And I didn't have a deep desire to share excellence in climbing necessarily, but I had a deep desire to do it myself. And I guess a lot of people told me to share it, and that's why I was doing it a lot back in the day. And I remember like during COVID was like specifically, I stopped doing as much because we weren't allowed to share anything that we were doing if we were going climbing. Like there was a whole taboo around even going climbing during COVID. I mean, there
Oh,
was
that's
like,
right.
it
I
was
forgot
weird, right?
about
Because
that.
like, yeah, like some areas you were totally okay. Like, I mean, we lived in Rifle with the same like 60 people for like 3 months. Like we never left. So it was, I think all of us are agreeing that it was fine, and we would actually know if someone came into town, and we would just be careful. But if we were in like Bishop or Red Rocks, I for sure couldn't post. Like I couldn't post much. So I remember being like scared to post at a certain point, and I love that you just said that again. Sharing excellence for the sake of other people, just like being a part of it. People can sense that, and people can see it.
Well,
And I'm
also,
hurt, so I'm not sharing
yeah.
excellence right now. But
Yeah, I feel you on that. But I guess also I just want to point out that this is what it's like when you're younger and getting inspired. Like if everyone keeps it all secret, I don't know. I bounce back and forth on this stuff because I grew up in an era where it was just taboo to. I mean, just you didn't even talk about grades and all this stuff. But I also grew up in an era where if I saw a picture of Chris Sharma doing Necessary Evil or something, it was deeply, deeply inspiring. And so if you don't share anything, it's just this weird balance. I don't know. I don't have any
Dude,
answers
totally.
here. And we talked about
Yeah.
with Sean and stuff. It's like,
Mm,
you know, you do like there's something to climbing media and sharing, but then it also can be done in a bad way. And I don't know. I don't want to go any deeper in this because I don't know.
yeah.
We're hopefully we're contributing it in this nuanced way because I love climbing and I want to make it as fun as it can be. And it's fun to talk about. It's fun to hear about. It's fun to watch it because you can't quite do it every second of the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can only climb
Totally.
so much, and lots of people are probably on their commute or plugged in route setting right now and still loving climbing and trying to take it in whatever form they can when skin is raw and work beckons.
Yeah. But yeah, something you said right there, you can share media things in a bad way. And I think a lot of climbing, just my personal take and, my personal feelings are, and because it's a platform that I can share on, it's actually the only platform I share on right now. I'm going to share. I think climbing is shared in a bad way a lot of the time. The vast majority of media that I think is like mostly for people's selves to share versus sharing for other people to get psyched or like to be inspired, right? And so I feel very careful about, and that's maybe why I don't post so much anymore, is because I don't want to feel like I'm contributing to that. And so it's been pretty tough. But that being said, we're going to share a little bit of spray today. Um,
Spraying. Okay.
Dude, watching hard climbing
Go
is
for
really
it.
cool. Watching hard climbing at a high level is super super cool. Doing it, I think you guys are aware that we've done over 80 episodes of podcasts, and a lot of them are guests, but we've done a fair amount of talking about high level climbing. Me sharing about tactics, mechanics, timing, technique, the importance of your north stars and perspective and all that stuff is what I'm watching when I'm watching hard climbing. And I'm watching people learn it. I'm watching people take hold of it. I don't pride myself on being able to perform that type of stuff more than other people out there, but I understand it a lot more. And that's the difference between being a coach and being an athlete. I pride myself on being an athlete and a coach, or try to be an athlete while I'm a coach, but I can't help being a coach. Being a coach means that you understand something deeply, right? And you share it. You share it in a way that somebody can understand it and then take it for themselves and then find it out themselves. And so I find often that I talk to really high level climbers, and they often are just a step behind on something that I'm talking about. And I'm like, okay, I have to take a step back and see, like, how are you going to go through it? They're able to perform it far more frequently and far more effectively than I am, which is really cool. I watch it and I'm always like, wow, like that just looks easy for you, like, because I get it. I get how hard it is, and I get how layered it is to learn how to perform, learn how to navigate your mind a little bit. And that's what I coach. I coach people on usually the mental game of things and understand deconstructing where things come from, because as soon as you can identify issues, you can then work amongst them, or at least you can be aware of them, and then you can try to work amongst them. And a lot of people I find, especially at the highest level, I mean, there's a reason why people are talented and there's a reason why people are so strong and so skilled. It's probably because they have a lot of either very specific funneled goals into doing things a proper way, which actually comes with a lot of problems, right? And those problems come up. Everyone's problems come up eventually, right? We've talked about this before. And so I kind of have the timing at which you identify them and how you kind of navigate through them is kind of where you're going to end up being as a performer. And so I watch a wide variety of climbers. The biggest thing I noticed too is it's very hard for me to tell the difference in strength levels. It's something that's huge as I watch a wide variety of levels of climbers, but the physical levels, I can't really tell the difference. And sometimes I'm shocked, right? I'm shocked at how strong some people are and not sending, and how weak some people are. And I use that word lightly there because they're not weak, but how weak they are compared to how strong I expect they need to be to do climbing in a certain way. And then how strong some people are also, even though they're, maybe like Nate, for example, like the way that he climbs and the way that he warms up is absurd. He doesn't, it's almost one of a kind. Him basically his warm up is he goes a wet dream and he does kind of crux sections different ways, right? It's like, okay, first of all, to use a V12 climb, to just like climb in a different way. And it's something that I do. I don't do it to the degree that Nate does it, and I definitely do it, but just to provide some insight into it, he basically just does the crux move of wet dream, which is probably a V8 to V9 crux alone. Which is from the I don't know if you know it, but from the left shoulder to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
side pole, like you do that toe hook catch going to that horizontal sloper thing. He does it either statically, like completely static with no toe hook. He just reels that full crimp in, just turns and just statically goes up, and it's like kind of mind blowing to watch. You're like, I've
I
never
don't
really
think I
seen
toe
somebody do
hooked.
that.
I don't think I toe hook for that move, Tim. But
Yeah,
I
some people
also,
either jump. I
yeah,
would say
jump.
like standard way is like you got this drop knee and a foot, and then you like catch a toe hook as you stick it. Was like beta that I knew of as like quote unquote standard for
Maybe
a long
that's why I
time.
haven't done it. Yeah.
You haven't done Wet Dream? Oh,
I,
dude,
I fail. I mean,
come down.
I know I tried. I had a mega session on it, and I thought I could pull it off. And it's hard to put together. That thing's
Super hard.
it. What a climb! What a stacked
Yeah.
boulder. Okay, sorry. So I shouldn't have interjected
No, no.
my experience. I want to hear more about people who warm up on my project.
Yeah, I mean it's super awesome. Like basically, I guess what I'm pointing out is, someone like Nate is fully aware of certain mechanics that goes on in his body and certain mechanics that need to be warmed up. It's a totally different. I guess my point in sharing that is not to just highlight Nate and what he does, but to say that strong climbers have a totally different understanding of what performance comes from and where it comes from and what you need to be working on and what you need to be focusing on. And watching him do his whole warm up process is insane. He's also out there, dude. Like I very infrequently go out with him because I've got life and I don't want to just like go with Nate and like sit at Black Velvet Canyon for
But
a
you
long
kind of
time and
do
like
a
not
little
pull
bit.
on a little
But you
bit, a
kind of
little
do,
bit.
yeah.
But like he'll get up and when he goes out to session, he'll get up pretty early and leave, and he won't be back until like way into the night. I'm
Wow.
like, wait, is he? Is he going anywhere else other than Sleepwalker? And he comes back and shows me all these videos, like shows. I'm like, dude, like you were just there for like 12 plus hours straight for the 50th time in the last 2 months. Like you're insane. Like you're actually insane. And yeah, I definitely did that too when I was younger, but like I just don't do it very much anymore. And to see it live is really cool. Also to see it live as like someone who's older, right? Because it makes sense when you're younger, but seeing it someone who like that's his life, that's his life, and he takes it super seriously. It's like that's what it
Well,
takes to climb the
that
hardest climb in the world.
I mean, that's what I remember that video of Daniel Woods doing it,
Right.
and it was a cool video. By the way, I really like that vibe on that video, and he went pretty deep on that. He was out in the desert, kind of yeah, dealing with desert life and trying hard. And I mean, I love seeing that. I do think that we see a lot of people take a lot of hard things quickly, and that always makes you wonder, what if these people who are ticking V16 in 3 sessions, like what happens when they put 300 sessions or 30 even.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
love seeing that. And yeah, it's interesting what you said, where you see all these I'm just going to say pros, because it's like this, I don't know, general statement for some of the strongest people in the world, and how you can't always tell like the physical difficulties, sorry, the physical differences there. And it makes me think of, I just kind of don't want to name names exactly, but there is you know, everyone who's been on this pod, everyone who's been on other pods, like they are roaming between Bishop and Red Rocks right now. And I heard from someone that watching different people on lucid dreaming was really interesting, where some people who you would think might do really well didn't do so well, or they have plenty of that grade in their on their scorecard, and then other people just did really well on it. And it just goes to show you that even when you're in a crew with 6 V16 climbers, that you never know how each climb will go. And it's interesting that when you even watch it in person, Tim, you're seeing it's not as clear like why someone is as successful as others, and that mental game is still a big part. And then I guess style really comes down. But what does style mean it on V16, where these people have proven themselves over multiple V16s? And this is where grading is interesting. But just I don't know, I could
Dude,
I like
on that
that
note
stuff.
too, like even having Will Bosey come in to try, Sleepwalker return, and I mean, first of
Did
all,
you
doing
see
it as
him on it?
quickly as he did.
Did you
I
watch him
didn't
on
see him
it?
on it. I didn't see him on it. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be here for another like probably month or so. Um, I'm not rushing out to see for him to meet his biggest #1 fan. No, I'm
That's
just
how
joking.
were you talking shit there? Come on, he seems like a really nice guy. That sounds
No,
like a mean thing
yeah,
to
no, he
say. He seems
seems.
like a really, really, really nice guy. I'd like to watch
Well,
Will
no,
Bosey.
yeah, it has nothing to do with Will there. I'm just making a joke about
Okay.
celebrities or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, I've heard multiple times
Will,
that Will's
it's
one of the
me,
coolest.
Tim. I'm your biggest fan. Sign my chest. Yeah.
No, I'm sure. I mean, dude, look how many likes he gets on some stuff. He's like his Sleepwalker updates get like over 15,000 likes. It's like, wait, am I looking at a real
Wow.
celebrity? You know, it's like
Wow.
I thought we were still rock climbers. Like,
I love
it's
how
pretty
climbing
crazy.
the celebrities in climbing, except for Chris Sharma, just seem very like normal people. Like, could you imagine
Yeah.
if you met Will Bosey at a party in college? You'd be like, "Oh, hello, nice to meet you, Will." But then he goes out into the desert behind underneath a piece of rock, and people are like, "Oh my god, it's Will!" I don't know, climbing's hilarious. Yeah,
Makes you wonder. I wonder if celebrities are just real people.
or it makes you wonder who's that person you just met at Starbucks. You never know. Maybe they're the best ping pong player the world has ever seen, and you
Yeah,
just didn't
maybe you met
know.
Jesus, dude. Who knows?
All right,
Just
you took
sitting
it to
there
the
talking.
logical conclusion. All right, all right. Now, okay, Jesus, Will Bosey, Sleepwalker. Go on, go on. Yeah,
um, my point there was that Will, even when you watch Will on his session updates and stuff, he's not necessarily like Nate. You know, like Nate looks like he's very built for it. Like he literally has like done the moves in his understanding of the perfect way to do the moves. Will is a very different approach where he comes from somewhere never trying Sleepwalker and never climbing in Red Rocks before, but he's good enough and strong enough to just do the climb with his style. I think it's far more interesting to see the differences in like how people approach climbing based on those two things. And I've also approached climbing in a similar concept where as long as I go to a new area, I'll be able to figure it out based on the things I've taught myself. I don't really need to sit there and teach myself how to do this one particular climb as much as me being ready to do climbing, period. I really respect that. And I really respect someone like Nate as well to be able to figure out the most perfect way to do something. You know, there's completely two different aspects of climbing. And I think that's something that a lot of people are sensitive of a little bit, but like totally are not aware of it, you know, in its entirety. And I think it helps in performance, by the way, too. Like when I talk to people like Nate, I just tell him straight up that I think it's important to balance those two aspects. And you may be getting sucked in, for example, to that one thing, and he'll probably admit to it, and he'll say like, "Oh, I guess that's helpful," and then he'll
well,
change, and then he'll make
at
huge
least
breakthroughs.
at least if you're going to get sucked into like one specific thing, I like that you said that's like a balance between the two, and there's like this idea of kind of mastery and building up your foundation and then deploying it on a specific
Right.
instance, and maybe diving deep but I do think that there's like a flywheel there too, where you don't want to spend all your time on one project, but sometimes busting through that plateau, or making it through that challenge can be really cool too. And so I think it's cool that you use that as an example, because I don't want people to get stuck in this idea of like,
Mm.
I'm always just building a foundation or something, or dealing with
Right.
mastery, because sometimes you do want to have a little boss battle. And dude, Return of the Sleepwalker, hell of a boss battle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. Like my personal philosophies and my underlying values in climbing are to build those foundations and do everything that we talked about on the pod. But like you can go look at my resume and my track record. Like I've spent at least hundreds of tries on all of my first of any grade or like my first of any new type of climb or new style. Or I'll spend probably a minimum of 3 to 5 sessions on the climb, a minimum, and then like in between 300 to 1,000 attempts on a lot of the stuff that I do. So I believe in highly and spending the time to like have those boss battles. I love that you just said that because it's like it's kind of what it feels like. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna try this thing with unlimited respawns and I'm just gonna go for it. Because like I'm gonna figure out how to do it with unlimited respawns. But I think life and comps and performance are about that one life. What are you gonna do with it? So climbing is a weird, like, but also beautiful sport where we kind of have to learn both tracks. And if you don't, I have taken people out personally. I have watched personal battles with people who aren't sensitive to enough to the fact that they need both. And they complain, they talk about themselves and the experience in a bad way where they're like, I can't do that. That's not me. And it's like, well, you're just not accepting that it should be you and it's going to be difficult, right? But like you need to find a balance between both of those aspects of performance. And so kind of back to performance talk, watching someone like Will perform in that given that context is super interesting. Like I guess I do wish that I watched most of his early experience. If I was allowed to, I would like want to be one of those like little fly drones just watching like all strong climbers because it's just so interesting to see the entire experience. But I can make a lot of assumptions about like what I'm watching. And for example, he picked a completely different beta than what Nate did. Or he does
Oh, interesting.
I think he does Sean Rabitou beta for the bottom.
Hmm.
Basically, there's a sequence where, you do a bunch of like quote unquote regular climbing movements into this like right hand side pull, and then to get into Sleepwalker you throw yourself into this like pretty good hold. Like I think they say to get established into the two Sleepwalker underclings, like the best ones is like it's kind of like a V6 move to get into it, so actually pretty good holds and like pretty good feet. But to go in from underneath into an undercling, requires really hard positioning and like shoulder moves and stuff. Well, Nate just goes straight on, right? He's a little bit taller and he's got really really strong shoulders and fingers, so he just goes in thumb. He like sticks it with his thumb and then
Wow.
curls into a gas stone. Yeah, love climbing moves
Dude,
like that.
just like everyone listening, go watch the Daniel Woods video of it, because Daniel
Mm-hmm.
also has that like slow style where he like sticks it and like reels it in. So yeah, this is like
Yeah,
almost like a gasto cling up into the left where you hit with your thumb and then twist it and get your fingers on it. And
right.
fuck yeah,
So cool.
I love that style.
Yeah, and then you got to move your feet in the right place, shift your hips, and like go in and out of the wall and do that climbing, which is so cool. I love
So
watching
cool.
Nate do it. I've also seen like immense amounts of progress through that section of climbing with Nate, and I talk about that. And that's also something that's really cool with the style that's like so long, is you can see that type of progress. Or you can find different types of progress. Uh, Basically, Sean Rabitou beta, which was found a while ago. There's a little video of Sean Rabitou and Sean Bailey trying Sleepwalker from a couple of years, maybe a year or two ago. That's what Will Bosey does. So basically, instead of going shoulder, he goes into a down pull, which is like I think a foothold for
Oh
Sleepwalker,
wow.
and then you come into another down pull, or you get a really high heel hook, and then you come in underclings like this with your
Sick.
heel at the same height as your hands. So it's a really really scrunched up way of climbing. And I'm actually surprised that it works for Will because he's a couple inches taller than Sean. He's a couple inches shorter than me and Nate, but he's a couple inches taller, and so it looks super scrunchy when he does it. His fingers, I don't know if you watch him climb, but he's got this incredible full crimp capability, but he also open hands really strong, which is surprising, right? Like when you
Mhm.
watch someone full crimp a lot, I don't think you watch them rely on open handing very much, but the holds on Sleepwalker require you to open hand a lot. Especially this right hand is very like slotted, and you can't, if you curl your fingers into a lot of the Sleepwalker holds, you're getting blocked. So you actually can't full crimp a lot of the holds.
I
Some of them
hate
you need to, but some of them you can't.
I fucking hate seam crimps, Tim. I hate that feeling
Yeah, I
when you
kind of hate,
go and then you try to like close it down
and
and
then
you
you're
bang into
blocked.
the wall and anyways, just
Yeah.
that's my
But
rant.
watch Will, on his kind of recent session updates, like the way that he grabs some of the holds, I kind of see it as like how a bear, like, I don't know, like he's got like bear paws. Like he's very comfortable with his pinky doing nothing. But then when he's full crimping, like his fingers look so strong. And so I kind of was just watching that and his whole approach to getting climbing done. I guess like I'll take a many, many layers back. Just seeing how he sees climbing is completely differently than how Nate sees climbing. And to watch that whole process go down, I think is pretty cool. And so that's
Dude,
kind of the biggest thing I've noticed with higher level
Tim,
climbing.
you are Will's biggest fan. You need to go get that signature. Maybe if he like massages your knee, it'll make it heal faster. Dude, okay, I'm gonna kind of go off on a tangent, but I can't help it because you were talking about full crimping on it and open handing, and we posted this clip of Carlo Traversi. We did a pod with Carlo Traversi on the Dark Side FA, and he made a comment about how he rarely or he tries to not full crimp, and people freaking lost their minds. There is a million comments. People are angry and debating each other. And then my favorite thing. So actually, let me just set the stage. Carlos said that he avoids full crimping like the plague, and he also says that there is a hold on the dark side where he full crimped. And people were like, "Look, he's contradicting himself. He's a doof, even though he climbs V16 and
Wait, sorry. He
every."
also says on top of that that other grip varieties are important to train. And that I actually think that's the best counter argument to saying don't full crimp is actually just to provide more strength and structure to other ways of climbing.
Yeah, yeah.
But sorry.
So I'm just my hands are sweating, but not because I want to climb, because I got like angry about this, where people got so so up in arms and took it so binary and so black and white, where they're saying that what Carlo Traversi is saying is that you should never full crimp. And then what was hilarious is that people came to his defense and argued that why he was saying that is to avoid injury, which is not what he was saying at all. Carlos is not saying that you can't full crimp and that he doesn't full crimp for injury. what he was saying in our longer clip on the podcast, which if you're listening to this, you probably heard it. So if you're listening to this, you probably weren't one of those people that flipped out, but let's just go into the nuance anyway. He was saying that different grip types, as Tim was saying, provide different options. So a sloper, an open hand grip has different benefits and different shortcomings. A full crimp is typically the best way to exert as much force on a hold, basically make a bad hold as good as possible, but also limits the amount of things that you can do. It really fixes your wrist position. It doesn't let you pull left and right as much. It gives you really good down pulling force. And what Carlo was pointing out is that he likes to be able to put his thumb on, and it lets him control his body, his movement left and right, up and down. And he wasn't saying that you can never full crimp, just that different grip types have different benefits and detractions too. And what he's found is that if he can avoid full crimping, then it gives him more optionalities to increase his ability to move his body and shift his weight where he wants it. So full crimp is his last resort. That's all he's saying. Full crimping is fine. Full crimping is useful. Carlo literally full crimped while doing the FA of the dark side, probably one of the most difficult climbs in California and technical climbs, V6 team. So you guys just stop flipping out, listen to the full podcast. And actually, I don't think it's come out yet, but we did a longer YouTube version where we added some footage and everything to kind of hopefully dispel people from that myth of just thinking it was for injury prevention. And so, yeah, now we have YouTube that takes our clips. And for those people who can't take the time to listen to a master like Carlo explain his detailed process, because they should, now we have a little short form for them too on YouTube. So yeah, that was me advertising YouTube and telling you to just listen to what Carlos actually saying. Don't get in your head all crazy about full crimping being awful or the only thing. It's just another grip type. Anytime anyone tells you that something is always great or always bad, we all know that it's never like that. And that's what we're here to do, is provide that nuance. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
And I
rant
don't think
over.
that's what he was saying, right?
No,
It's
no,
not that he was saying
that's what
always
people
avoid
wanted
full
them to
crimping.
say. Yeah, it's like they
Yeah.
somehow like wanted him to be saying that. You're like, no, no.
Yeah. I
Sorry.
think yeah, no, I social media is hilarious, man. Like me, Josh always has to tell me to like go look at the comments too, because I'll just like won't go there. I'm not gonna go, dude. Like I hate the idea of people who maybe only listen to what they want to listen to, right? And that's really just that's the pro tip for today for me. I didn't really come up with one because I knew the discussion was just going to be about kind of higher level climbing, but that's a great pro tip, is like take it for yourself, man. Like, but not in a way where you want to, like, don't listen to things that you just want to listen to. Like, listen to everything and understand why someone might be saying that and why it might apply to you in a good way. And just try to find the good. There's no reason to debunk all this stuff like, oh, Carl has no idea what he's talking about, guys. Like, yes, he does. Yes, he freaking does, dude. Um, what I got from that whole reel, and it's crazy too, because you like that reel goes up and instantly I'm like, oh, I love this reel, right? And then you go and you're telling me like all these people who are just like absolutely taking a fat poop over all of it, and I'm like, what? Like this take is so good. Okay, so what are people misunderstanding? And what I got from the take was we just rely on that too much. And if we rely on it, because there's pros and cons of wide grip varieties, the biggest thing that I personally have run into is full crimping is dangerous. It's the only times I've popped my pulleys is really like full crimping, and I'm just doing that too frequently anyway. And I kind of know also immediately that it's going to happen. I just like sometimes in certain moves, I know that the only way I'm going to get the climb done is by full crimping through it. Should I do that though? Is clearly my body is telling me no. So it's a weird thing where it's like, yeah, to be successful, you might need to do it, but you shouldn't be doing it at the frequency that you do it at. That's the point, right? Is that if you rely on it too much, it can just be a little bit blinding for you, right? It's the same thing as everything else that we talk about on this podcast specifically. If you rely on too many things and you bias towards too many specific things, you're only going to listen to that one thing. But sometimes there's a different answer that could be more effective, right, to
By the
get you
way,
through a movement.
I've definitely have seen this happens in kids. They rely on 3-finger drag on for everything, and that can be super limiting on them. I mean, those kids who just, you're like, why
That
are
was me.
you okay? Yeah, it's not great either. And by the way, I've actually never hurt myself full crimping. Knock on wood there. I only hurt myself on open hand, interestingly. So Just
I've hurt myself in both. Yeah, I think both hurt me of actually
yeah,
equal amounts of times. It's funny. I brought up that take to Nate. We were sitting on the couch and just talking about it, and I was like, "Oh, dude, like Testpiece Instagram, this reel is blowing up. People are commenting." And he was like, "Oh, what's the take?" And I was like, "Well, Carlos." And then he goes on. He's like, "Oh, dude, first comments, Ben Burke saying garbage take." I was like, "Oh, dude, like first of all, we could never say that about Carlo. Like we can't really say that in general. I have no beef with Ben. I'm just saying like that's horrible to say like about under the context of another professional. Like I wouldn't like to see that.
yeah, I
But it
agree.
was just funny. And then Nate was like, I kind of agree though. And I was like, that's insane to me. Nate full crimps more than almost anybody that I see, and even Nate can agree. And I guess like he's like, I can see it, because he's
Wait,
like,
he
I guess
agrees with Ben or with
no, he
Carlo?
agrees with Carlo. He agrees with
Interesting.
Carlo
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that like full crimping definitely is something that we over rely on. Full crimping is definitely something that we shouldn't always be trying to do. And if in fact, I guess what he said was it's more interesting to see it in a way where maybe we should avoid it like the plague, where it's like
Well,
I
but
guess if
again,
we invested in these other grip types.
yeah, this isn't Carlos saying like he's saying that also he's saying he avoids it like the plague, right? Like it doesn't mean that other people couldn't have tons of success avoiding open hand like the plague, and he was just explaining why he chooses to avoid full crimping because it doesn't do what he needs it to do. It does not
Yeah.
provide him with his style, his yeah, and I don't know. I just to behind the scenes that's funny too is I put out this clip and I didn't really think too much of it. I just thought it was interesting. I mean, like literally just interesting. Like, oh,
Yeah.
Carlo Traversi knows a lot about climbing. This is his take on full crimping. And then there's all this vitriol and and Ben writes that like instantly, and I message Carlo and I'm like, oh dude, are you bummed that I put this clip up? Like I feel
Mm.
like it's just total clickbait now. I didn't mean to. Like, do you want me to take it down? I literally was like, dude, do you want me to just take this down? Because I'm not here to have a gotcha moment where it's like, oh, like yeah, hot take, like and
Totally.
Carla was like, dude, don't even worry about it. He's like, internet is just weird. Like, don't even think about it. And
Yeah.
so what I tried to do was, yeah, clip a YouTube video that expands on a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, all this is just to say, yeah, be careful getting too upset on anything, and you can learn something from everyone. And I know that Carlo does full crimp. I mean, literally, he says that
Yeah.
in there. So Ben Burke, who I don't know, and I know he can crimp like a boss. And
Hmm.
everyone else who wrote this on there, just chill. Like, you do you. Maybe there's something to learn though. And sometimes you can learn stuff from beginners. Sometimes you can learn stuff from experts. And sometimes you can hear something, find it interesting, think about it and say, that's interesting. Maybe it's not for me, but I see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full stop. Right.
Um, yeah, dude,
Just,
100%.
yeah.
This can transition nicely back into kind of the talk of higher level performance, but the kind of the final take I got from Carlos' little reel there, and I love that we're talking about it. I think it's a phenomenal take. Like I said, I think a lot of people should take it seriously, and a lot of people should implement it 100%. If I was to say take any advice about finger strength training or like finger strength usage in climbing, that would be probably one of the most important takes because you wouldn't think so, and you wouldn't like try to do it very much. But every time I have tried to do something like that, I'm a little safer and I get more well-rounded and better. And here's the balance to take is he provides insight into saying that you're not going to feel as good training, especially early on in the other grip varieties. Open handing, pinching, sloper strengths and stuff aren't going to feel nearly as good as the full crimp. And that actually may be the reason why you might be full crimping anyway, which is not a good reason to full crimp, right? A good reason to full crimp is to understand why you might need a full crimp through a specific hold or a specific movement, right? And for example, like Carl and I went to Italy to Valdemello in the summer, and we were trying one of the prize boulders for the competition, which was a project which was the closest boulder to our hotel. It was right across the street, and like on the before the comp day, we like went over to it, and we were like, "Dude, this block is sick! Like, must be super hard." And it turned out to be like probably V12 or something. Well, during the comp day, we tried it a bunch, and it was basically just like one really hard move that you like jump to this crimp, and the launching crimp was weird. It was like, I mean, I took like a bunch of pictures of it. It was a really cool, kind of unique crimp. And we were both talking about, do you get more from full crimping it or half crimping it or open
Mm.
handing it? Because there's a different reason you were talking about a little bit, like wrist, kind of morphia and like what direction and like how much leverage you get from that. Can you even provide any momentum into the movement? Because sometimes you cannot with the full crimp, depending on how far it is away from you. We were using different feet. So like I was saying that like I'm gonna full crimp it, but you probably shouldn't. There was so much conversation as to like how are we supposed to use this crimp? And so a lot of the time you can probably just say, oh, I guess for this movement, I shouldn't be using a full crimp on this specific hold. So what other grip variety should I use and why? I think if we start thinking like that in climbing, then we can provide a lot more reasoning for us to train other parts of our fingers. And I think it's just phenomenal. It's such a good
Yeah,
take.
I love that discussion. And again, I just because I feel like we're still, I want to make sure to completely dispel this notion is that he, again, was not saying that it was to avoid injury. Like that could be a reason. It could be a reason for you, but that was not what he was saying. So I just want to
Yeah.
emphasize that. But that whole discussion you were having around, oh, do we do it like this or like this? You know, full crimp, open hand, and playing back and forth. It goes both ways. And I've definitely had times where I typically do not full crimp. I typically choose to use my thumb on things. And then, you know, one of my friends is like really having success full crimping, you know, this pinch. Like I'm like, oh no, this is like a side pull pinch. I'm pinching it. Gives me more control. And then they're like, just try it. And then all of a sudden I do the move. I'm like, damn it. You know, in general, I think it's good to follow your intuition and your biases. It just in general, and I guess you know, it goes back to some of those conversations we've had about 100% full commitment on whatever beta you're choosing, but then keep that open mind. And just because you heard from a reel on Carlos saying he avoids full crimps like a plague doesn't mean that for you to get that move done and actually have more success, maybe you should full crimp. And it's just, yeah, not black and white. And also, actually,
Yeah.
I want to address one more thing and then link it into some hard climbing that's going on that blew my mind. Is he talked about how in the gym you can pinch everything or you know because holds stick out from the wall and that's really true. You in the gym I feel like I do full crimp less, although it still happens. And then people had these comments, well, like if I'm outdoors or if I'm training for the outdoors, then I should not do that in the gym. And the two things are is just like clearly Carlo has success using his thumb and pinching everything outdoors. So maybe you need to check yourself about what you think you're doing inside and how it translates to outside. And then to stack onto that is a cool example of something Austin Hoyt just did where I'm glad we can share this because I saw this video of him doing the lucid dreaming move in a totally different manner that is totally new school and totally came from someone who has been in the gym and utilizing new age indoor gym techniques outdoors. And I don't know, Tim, do you want to describe how that move went and what he's doing? Because I think it is so fucking cool. Like so fucking cool. Good on Austin. And also just blows my mind about something that we thought was kind of established and known, and he's breaking it wide open. So yeah, can you describe Austin on lucid dreaming for us?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, hopefully if you guys are listening, you guys know what the lucid dreaming
No,
boulder
dude,
looks like, I
describe it.
would
Just just
assume.
just just
Yeah,
describe
but
that
I'm
move
I'm
because
gonna
it's so
describe it,
sick.
but
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just pointing out that you guys should know what lucid dreaming is. But basically the movement on lucid is actually what we're talking about is the
Good point.
Rastaman vibrations move.
Shout out
So you're
Jared
pulling
Roth.
on from the pinch. Yeah, shout out Jared Roth. You're pulling on from the undercling and the pinch. And the usual way to do is you just jump to this slot. So you either have just the right foot on because it's actually really difficult to put your left foot on that la belay ledge. But a lot of people put their foot on the la belay ledge if they can get it there. And then you just jump. You stick
And that
this
slot's pretty
really,
good. That
the
slot's pretty
slot's
good. But
good,
and your feet
but
cut.
your feet cut.
Yeah.
I would say that if your fingers are a little bit thicker, they actually don't go in all the way. And so for someone like me, like I'm actually crimping like another seamed edge, and it's like barely inside of it. Kind of sucks. But it's definitely a pretty good hold. Like I felt like I could easily hold the swing on the position if I hit it perfectly. And so that if you hit it perfectly is huge because the pinch is so bad and you're like jumping into it. Well, the way that
Really
Austin
bad
does it,
guys. Really,
oh, it's like one of the
really a
worst
bad,
holds I've
like
ever
really
grabbed
a bad
still.
pinch. It's just it's glassy, maybe quarter pad. What do you think? Quarter
Yeah, maybe
pad?
it's quarter
Yeah.
pad. Yeah.
Yeah. And this
And it's
wall's
not
still
very
steep.
in-cut.
And your
Yeah.
feet are cutting. And that yeah, so good old lucid.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Yeah. But yeah, you hold that pinch and you hold the swing, and it's a pretty violent swing. Like almost anybody that I've seen stick it, I would say other than like Megos, Jimmy Webb, maybe Daniel, like
Oh,
Pretty much
those
everybody
guys.
looks like they're fighting
Yeah,
like really
those
hard to
guys are
hold
pretty
the
good.
position. Yeah, those
Yeah.
guys are pretty good. Well, the way Austin kind of innovated the way to do it was he double clutches, so he jumps to the crimp and then he keeps that momentum going and goes to the next one, which is a much better opposing hold. So it's like, obviously the pinch is opposing, it's still pulling leftwards, but the next one's also pulling leftwards. The ones that's the ones lower than you is so much worse. So it kind of makes sense to like hit this. This hold's good enough to hold with one hand for a minute or for a second just to get to the next one. So you watch him do it, and when he does it, and he said that he's making it more consistent, when he actually does it, he cruises it. And so it's like, oh man, obviously my whole understanding of the climb and the move is that that type of high volatility method, even though it's easier physically, could be harder to do and generate and do more consistently from underneath. When you're getting a little bit more compromised and taxed and tired, the volatility increases significantly, which is why those moves exist in competition, because you get taxed and more physical, and your likelihood of falling is just higher. But that's okay in rock climbing, and I actually think it's very, very smart that he's doing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that being done a lot more in the future,
I'm
just because it does look physically less difficult.
I mean, I'm just I I love this. There's a side of me that hates it, where I love this kind
Yeah.
of just burly, straight on kind of classic, yeah, the classic test piece of Bishop with this. Can you crush this little shark tooth undercling to stand up, get that pinch exactly right? Because if you get just a little bit wrong, you're not going to be able to either, maybe you can generate, but then you can't hold that swing. And I just love this, man. I love that he is pioneering a new way on a climb that is so straightforward. There's just not a lot of holds there, and he's done something that in some ways is so obvious now that he's done it.
Mm.
I do wonder, but I'm kind of curious, and I know you've talked to him a little bit about it. And it's funny because someone showed me the video before we even talked about, because it was so mind blowing. They were like, "Look at this! What the hell is this guy doing?" And so, do you think that that means that he could actually get that pinch not so good, because
Mm.
all he has to do is generate, because he doesn't have to hold that swing? Like, does I guess there's
That's
higher
an interesting question.
volatility in that, 1-2, but maybe there's also lower volatility in how perfectly he needs to get the pinch from the ground. I don't know. I'm just
I would say that
armchairing
changes
here.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, my whole thing there, and so I coach this kind of concept a lot, because a lot of people will struggle with the whole generation aspect of certain things. And what I point to is that the reason you're doing the movement comes from a different place, or the derivative of how you are generating for this move. It just depends. Do you need the pinch? Like, is Austin doing the move with the pinch? I would argue not really. I would argue that his stance is pretty ideal. His size is very ideal in a way that his hips thread that movement, at least from the video that I watched, really well. So maybe for him, the pinch doesn't need to be that good. But if you're the type of climber to generate from your arms more, which is fine, I think it provides a little bit more control and is a little bit slower, then for sure you need the pinch. So if you don't know how to do it the way that Austin's doing it, for sure you need the pinch better. But if you know how to do it the way that Austin's doing it, it just depends how he feels. I would say, like, from go to go, I would not be surprised if he sent it and then came back off the climb and was like, bro, that was the worst I ever grabbed that pinch. I see that all the time
Yeah. Yeah.
where people are like, oh, that's the worst I've ever had it. And it's like, well, that means you learned the movement perfectly. Like, you did the movement perfectly. You don't need the point of contact to be strong and
Well,
ideal, but you learn the movement
but
perfectly.
so this is what's so interesting about some of these higher volatility movements, is that what you might say is that you know how sometimes on more burly static, or I mean, even though it is dynamic the kind of normal way, it's like, oh, that time everything lined up and I just got that pinch perfectly. But then on these kind of more dynamic style, like a 1-2, you might be able to get the pinch not so good, but but everything lined up in the 1-2 and your hips went through the right way. You got that movement just perfectly that time, and it all came together. And I guess
Yeah,
it just,
precision matters less on
well,
that method,
well,
is what
but
you're saying.
it's precision in a different way. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the movement generation and where his hips went matters more. And so it's like, which precision did you get? Which one did you do that time? And I just,
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, it just it blows my mind seeing new tricks brought to old problems. It makes me think how much stuff is hiding in plain sight. Like, honestly, props to Austin. Now in hindsight, it's not that surprising. Like,
Right.
like if we were to set this on the board, it's like, yeah, you guys, I'm gonna let go of the bad hold and just go to the good hold. Like, why are you guys holding on to this shitty hold when you just go to the next one? It just shows
Mhm.
you how ingrained stuff gets from beta videos, and how you often harp about this, Tim. Like, go up and be yourself. Like, don't get stuck on what other people are doing. Climb it yourself. And you even brought that up in Sleepwalker grading and people getting sucked into how it was done before. And I just love it, man. I props to
Yeah.
Austin. Very cool. Very cool.
I was gonna say too, kind of on that note, I think it's a just approach. I think what you were saying before was it kind of makes you angry, that like that's even possible, or
Yeah.
like that's the way it might be done. And I agree. I think there's a huge ethic to
Jokingly
climbing
though,
where
jokingly, I I'm
jokingly,
I don't give a shit, to be honest. I think it's
well,
awesome. Yeah.
it doesn't bother me that Austin's doing it that way. It would bother me if I found that and I'd be like, damn, but that's the way I can do it. Like, I would like to see if I'm capable of doing it. So if it was me, just for example, like I would do it Austin's way because that's the fast, if it was easier and if I could unlock it, which I have no idea, I haven't tried
Might
it.
be harder
But
for
if
all we know. Yeah.
let's just say I found out that I could do that quicker, I would try to do it the other way as well because that's for me what climbing is. I don't think everyone is doing that. I don't think it's expected, but that's why I kind of agree with you. It's like, oh, just kind of make me upset that I'm not like able to do it the way that like Paul and Daniel envisioned it really, really early on. And that's what I think climbing used to be. Climbing used to be this like spray stuff where you would show your buddy like, oh, let's go to the gym and I made this sick rig. And it's like they're all arbitrary things. And I think a lot of us used to view rock climbing still as like arbitrary things. But there's I think a new age way of looking at it is to go and be like, there's a set of holds and a recommended or suggested difficulty of based on consensus beta and the way that we use these holds and the way that we get up this wall, that's probably what it is. But if you take your own take, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of rock climbs would change
Well,
kind of
it
in that way.
the thing that's interesting is that I had these two conflicting things where I think actually sometimes what makes a climb really special is when there's multiple ways to do it, but they all are similar difficulty. And
Right.
some example, I think we've used this before, like Angel Dino in Red Rocks. You can do the
Yeah, yeah.
Dino or you can crimp through it. Iron Fly is another example of that. Just a good this often happens outdoors on sport climbs the most, where
Mhm.
there's like four different ways to do the crux, all about the same. But then there's something interesting in bouldering where you just have like I think we're always kind of looking for like a pure move. Like, it's
Mhm.
fun to just think of something as, no, this is just the quintessential, even quintessential got in Red and Rocklands got messed with, even though it's supposed to be this like pure
Yeah.
move. I mean, and so I love both sides of the spectrum, and I appreciate seeing people do it new ways. So I actually love seeing young bloods come in and
Yeah.
pioneer. And I yeah, I want to say, or I don't know if you want to say one more thing about. I remembered something that Carlo told me about Lucid that I
Mhm.
gotta bring to the pod. But if there's anything else he wants about Austin pioneering,
On Austin's beta, I would be interested to hear what the grade take is. I'm not here to cause any things, but like I thought it was really interesting that Will Bosey's post of Sleepwalker, him just being able to say it's V15, which people should not. Dude, my personal take on this stuff, like people should not feel entitled enough to like tell him he's wrong. People should not feel entitled enough because he's the expert. We should just be listening and being like, "Oh, okay, thank you, Will." Like that's what we
yeah,
should be saying. But for so many people to be on there and being like, "What the hell? Like this guy just maybe doesn't know what it's like. Oh, this is insensitive." Like no, 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 no. Like that's his take, and we should take it, right? And I think that's something similar that could happen to something like Lucid with a different beta thing like that. And I would love to talk about Sleepwalker and
Will,
why grades are the way they are, but
yeah,
that's something I'd be interested in with
Will
Lucid
Bosey,
specifically.
you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Carlo, you're a dumbass talking about full crimping. And I'm just going to show you guys that Iron Man Traverse is the best climb ever. And yeah, I mean, that's like literally what we're hearing out there, where people are giving Will Bosey crap about. I mean, even if he's
Oh, it's crazy.
wrong, it's just like, let him, yeah, Will Bosey
There's no
knows
right
some
and
stuff.
wrong though.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's
you
just
know,
his opinion. Okay, I don't want to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You guys
Sorry,
be
but
not
yeah,
be
what was
nice out
Carlo's?
there to the world. It's just so the I just there's a few things I wanted to kind of correct on a few pods that we did, and then that I did with Carlo, and I just wanted to point out when we talked about Yosemite, me and Carlo, I realized that Leo Holding was the one who FA'd the wizard. And I feel like I kind of said that like Dean Potter FA'd it. But really, I've been asking people too if anyone has done the wizard. Like, I asked Jason K. I asked a bunch of people. Still don't know if anyone's done the wizard. I don't want to rehash this, but if anyone's listening and has done the wizard or knows someone who has, please, please reach out. I think I kind of insinuated that Randy Puro had FA'd Stick It, or yeah, Stick It, but he FA'd the static version of Stick It, not Stick It. I think Jerry Moffat is the one who did Stick It. And then this is the one that came to mind that I wanted to bring up, is that we kind of commented about how quickly Sean Bailey did lucid dreaming, and he did do it extremely quickly, and he did it with style, as Sean is one to do. But Carlos said that he was out there when Daniel Woods did the second ascent, and he said that Daniel just really did it quickly and really made it look easy. And he actually thought that might be one of the reasons why it kind of got that V15 grade and downgrade. And this is kind of classic Daniel Woods of that era, where he was just so physically strong, and he would do things like hypnotize minds. And it was like, how hard is it really? Well, how come no one ever freaking did it again, basically, after Daniel did, or it took a decade or whatever for hypnotize minds? And so I just kind of wanted to go back, and we kind of posited that maybe that was one of the quickest sends of lucid, but actually DW, the one of the OGs himself, really did it quickly. And so just wanted to
Yeah.
give a shout out to him.
But also bringing up Hypno is cool because you also mentioned that Rustam Galmanov, a Russian World Cup climber who may or may not be climbing anymore, but he was one of the strong. You would consider him, I feel like 10 years ago, one of the strongest crimpers like in the world. I feel like
Yes.
you would think of like him, Jungwon Chan, like Daniel Woods. I don't even think Sean Bailey was like in the scene that much at that time. But like those guys were so strong, and Rustam like came for the Vail World Cup back then, and I heard that he had done hypnotized minds. I obviously wasn't there. I was barely climbing yet. But I heard he did hypno like super quickly
Super
also, and
quickly.
like
It
very
blew our
easily.
minds. Yeah. Blew
Hmm.
blew the scene's mind.
Right. And they're like, and the thing that I would like to double down on and like kind of point out there is maybe we don't know exactly like what our bodies are capable of, one, and how strong Daniel and like people like Rustam really were. And I'll share a little insight also watching Noah Wheeler. And I've said this before on the podcast, and I said this before when we were talking about board lords, especially when Noah in that video during the tension board lords video. First of all, he probably didn't even care that much, but his skin was horrible, like horrible, like some of the worst skin I'd ever seen, and he was like keeping up with Zach and Ben, which is insane. Watching him pull on the Sleepwalker was like different. When you like spend a lot of time trying, and I haven't spent that much time on Sleepwalker, but I spent a lot of time climbing, and I know holds, and I know what holds are supposed to feel like and stuff. But when you watch someone strong, and I've climbed with Daniel a fair bit too, and like I've competed with him, I've been neck and neck in competition with Daniel sometimes, but not really because he's always better than me. He's like always, there's always a way. So I was never that naturally strong. Like I don't relate to Noah and Daniel. I don't think that my morphology or the timeline of which I've been climbing would have granted me that level of finger strength, even if I had tried to do the same approach. And it's not what I'm saying. I think they're specimens. They're very, very strong people. And I don't think there's a lot of people who could even acquire that level of strength, is what I'm saying. But that being said, when I go and compete against them, I'm still trying to win. And the way that I would try
Hell
to
yeah.
win is definitely not trying to do what they're doing, right? Why would I do that? Because I am never going to catch up. So I would approach all these different ways of performance and like trying to attack these climbs, and it would work a lot. Obviously climbs can be done. We know this, climbs can be done in a wide variety of ways, but man, could Daniel just crimp through something or like grab through something that didn't make any sense to me? I always be like, how are you supposed to compete with that? I would always get so frustrated. It's
Well,
like,
look at how
how,
Austin did lucid, like, or sorry,
right? Yeah,
didn't do
exactly.
lucid. Look at how Austin did that move. Really,
Yeah.
really cool.
But that's the argument is, you know, Daniel still will always be able to do lucid quicker and faster and stronger. And it's like, is that still a lead domino? Because I talked about this with Andy Lamb actually a long time ago. Andy used to think that, finger strength was like absolutely the number one lead domino up there, or at least in conversation, he would say that like finger strength is like one of the most important things in rock climbing. And be like, I 100% disagreed all the time. And now I'm at a place where I'm like, but if I had that finger strength, man, I'd be so psyched. And climbing would be different for me. Like I would look at climbing differently because, man, going back to Noah, watching him just try Sleepwalker and like figure it out, I was like, dude, you can talk to yourself about suggestions that I would never even say. Like how you can maneuver your hips and like provide momentum or provide structure into your lower back or your feet or set up your feet in a way. I know I couldn't do that because I tried, and I was like, well, I just, so when I try a climb like that, I'll try a move that I'll see somebody else do, and I'll be like, oh, that's a possible method. I wouldn't have looked towards that, and then I'll try it and be like, oh, now I know why, because I can't do it. Like my strengths and my weaknesses, just line myself up to do it a completely different way. But these guys can do it almost, and we used to talk about Nale in this way too. Like I remember the first time I went to go try Trieste, I watched Nale's video, which was, I think him and Paul had the only videos out when I started trying Trieste, and both of their betas are never done anymore, by the way, and they grabbed by far the worst holds you could grab on the climb, and you go 3 inches to the left of what Nolly and Paul were grabbing, there's a much, much better crimp. It's like, what? Like, how do they not see that? And it's like, because they don't need to, because they're so much stronger.
I just want to go back to something you were talking about with Daniel and Lucid and just kind of play devil's advocate. So I just want to, before I say it though, I want to point out that I love Daniel's brutal raw power, and I love imagining him just crushing that fucking pinch and just smashing and just being Daniel. I really do. It's something I really love in climbing. But you kind of made this comment where you said Daniel could always do it faster and more consistently. And so what I would say is though, do we understand climbing well enough to say that what if that pinch was worse and Austin might still be able to do that move?
I love that.
And, get through that section of rock, and Daniel couldn't. Like there comes a point, no matter how strong his fingers were, that was just so bad that even somebody who was the best in the world at that particular grip and style, they couldn't do it. But that different style that Austin was bringing of that kind of 1-2 jumpier unlocks something. And so I don't know what, I don't know what
we're getting into super deep controversial theory of rock climbing, and I think this theory started to unearth like when Daniel stopped winning nationals. When Daniel stopped winning, like the US nationals, or at least he started to like,
I don't know if he ever stopped, dude. He just maybe stopped going because did he ever not win nationals?
Yeah. I would, Muhammad Jafari was the first to
I know, I was there for that.
Daniel Woods.
But I don't want to, this just shows my bias and my love of Daniel. I remember that. I don't want to get into it. Go ahead.
Hold your bias, Josh. Hold your bias. What I'm saying, that's why I'm saying this is controversial theory, because I'm actually proving your devil's advocate point. The point is like, well, Daniel couldn't keep up. He couldn't keep up with the style, right? The holds on Lucid did get worse, and it wasn't exactly that climb, and it wasn't exactly that type of thing, but it was that type of thing. It was that instead of requiring you to have that strength to get moves done consistently and through strength, they didn't care about that whatsoever anymore in route setting and hold choices, right? Therefore, you saw other people thrive. Now, I'm not saying that Daniel's not the best boulderer of all time in his strong era, because I think he was. I actually think he was. And if he just kept doing it at that time, and maybe even still was winning competitions to maintain the confidence, I have no idea what Daniel was going through. I have no idea. But watching him climb, I knew for a fact, I was like, there are not that many people in the world who ever could do what he's doing. And maybe he just needed more frequency of challenges, maybe a wider variety. Dude, like he could just do almost any boulder that he went to, right? Yeah. So competitions don't necessarily point to the best rock climbers. Okay, that's a blanket statement we could make. Competitions, the winner of the competition isn't necessarily the best rock climber. That's the winner of the competition. And, Muhammad Jafari seemed like an amazing rock climber back then, but go watch that comp. The scores are weird. They were really close.
Really, right? And like, anyways, sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, but that's what winning competitions is like. It's about finding that consistency and finding that success in certain styles. And that's exactly why your devil's advocate is so interesting, is that's what route setters cared about for the last decade, consistently for the last decade too, which is kind of annoying, right? Because you kind of do want to see aspects of that. You want to see Daniel go and do that in a World Cup. Like in a World Cup, I want to watch that.
We all want to see Daniel being right. Daniel. I mean, maybe some people don't, but okay. I don't want to go down into the competition rabbit hole because it'll just take us.
No, I don't either.
Into another podcast, which is Anyways. Really interesting. Props to Austin. We should ask if we can post like a clip of that on Instagram. Cool. Hopefully he'll let us do that because it just looks cool. I mean, so good on him. We talked a little bit about how Sean Bailey also did lucid dreaming and did it quick. And on this topic of just hard climbing, I feel like I have to point out that Sean, while I was talking to him, just casually mentioned, oh yeah, evolution low. I mean, I did that. It was a cool climb. And the two things there that I want to point out is that there's just hard climbing going on right now on stuff that is just right in front of us. And it's almost this similar theme where what Austin did was very obvious and what Sean did was very obvious. And there's another hard project in Bishop that I know is going to go down soon that's obvious. And there's even that thing to the right of Trieste. I want to put a pin in that and actually ask you about that more because I think you probably have some insight into that. But just there's hard stuff just right in front of us. There's better ways to do hard climbs right in front of us. It just blows my mind where to this day, 10, 20 years later in bouldering, there's just amazing projects right. I mean, actually, hell, the dark side, another one that was right there. And I feel like we're actually a little bit on the cusp of this new era. And it feels different to me. The stuff that people are doing really feels different than it did 10 years ago. Even when Daniel, not to take anything away from Daniel, how he did Lucid and how he did maybe quicker than everyone, but it feels like there's just new hard things going down every day, and not in this negative kind of like consumptive way where it's just people ticking off like another V14 flash or whatever. It's like, no, these are projects that people knew about that are hard, that are right there, and they're finally getting done despite being tried over years. And it's exciting for me. I love seeing the
Dude,
sport
for
level
sure.
up.
Yeah, I find it really cool that like you and I have feels like we have like a finger on either side of the pulse of like V10. And I think climbing has shown that there's a lot more happening on the other side of V10, but on the, on the lower side of V10, climbing is still hard. Like something that and that's why I say I have a pulse on this because my girlfriend climbs, under V10. I coach a lot of people who climb under V10. Like I
Okay,
know that it's
hold on.
still
I'm glad that that's what you were saying right there because I thought you were trying to tell me that I'm just still struggling and under V10. Thanks, thanks. I was like, damn, Tim, that's
no,
mean.
Josh, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that V10 is still hard to get to, right?
Hell yeah, hell yeah, it really is.
Like just because we are seeing all this, new stuff in the highest end and the highest end's getting stretched more, the whole thing of climbing isn't getting diluted. It's not like, oh, everybody's expected. I don't actually think that's true whatsoever. And hopefully you guys don't feel that way. I still full-heartedly believe that personally climbing is a belt system, and watching people go through like white belt, yellow belt, all the way to black belt is still so interesting. What we're just understanding is that black belt maybe is a little bit further than we thought, and maybe it's deeper than we thought. But then that's all we're talking about today is talking about the black belts of climbing, and like that we're finding it. What it points to me is, what I'm kind of realizing is that climbing is so young in its sport because it's so complex. It kind of requires steepage, and it requires time, and it requires new takes and like new opinions, a lot more than I think other sports do because it's just it's so complex.
I'm interrupting you because it's funny because I often hear you say that. I often want to push back against it and say like, oh, but look at Fred Nicole, like look at Sharma. Yes, there's like new pieces of rock that are getting done, but really like you have to understand how good they are, not just for their time, but just how good they are. But then stuff like how Austin did Lucid Dream, like I agree with you. Like it's just there's
Yeah,
new stuff, and I love. I'm always saying that, like, but how strong was Chris Sharma really, or
right.
like how? But there's something new happening, man, and it happens. Eras change, and that I think that's a really good example of what Austin did. I mean, it's just a microcosm. It's not some single breakthrough that changes everything. But even with
Yeah,
Carlo on the dark side and using wet chalk and fans and like this massive gamut of things to get that done, it's just things are changing.
totally. I mean, you see this in other sports too. Like when I was in basketball for a bit, and when we were in basketball, we used to talk about this all the time. Like, well, who was better, right? Like you put MJ and Kobe in the same timeline, and LeBron and Allen Irving, anybody, or Allen Iverson, like anybody, all of the greats you would consider in NBA, put them in the same court right now, and they're all 30 years old. Like who's the best? And it's like, well, that's obviously really hard to say, and that's not what we're talking about. And who knows, right? Like I would say that MJ would have a fair shot at beating everybody else, but maybe not. Who knows? It's a totally different game. It was a totally different game. And so Chris and Fred, I think like they were some of the best you would ever see in the game that they were playing. They probably could stand toe to toe in a lot of things and a lot of styles, but I would highly doubt that I would still expect Sean Bailey to look stronger and like be better because that's just what's happening. Like we have more information, we have more standard. Like it's just amazing to me that they were able to do what they did with like no set standard, right? That's to me that's what's total goat status that
Yeah.
cannot even be replicated. They were the first, well, they weren't the first, but they were the first to boulder hard, right? Like that was insane.
Well, and this is what's cool about what you're saying, where you actually can try lucid how it was done originally. And this is Carlo said how when he did Dominator, he wanted to do it like Jerry Moffat did. That's how he
Mm.
wanted to do it. Uh, okay, I want to dive into Devolution, but just because we didn't have our normal intro and everything, I want to do a few announcements just because if I don't stop us here, we're gonna just nerd out for another hour and I'll forget to do it. But I just want to say that we have our next classroom coming up on February 21st, 7 p.m. Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time. They're just they're doing great. They're just a blast, Tim. And I think that something I love about them is that we just have this community there. Like it's not just like we have this consistent. We see the people. We've seen people have ups and downs, injuries, new jobs. Struggles that then they bust through and hit the next plateau. And I think something that's been really special is getting to see behind the scenes of what we're doing and meeting the listeners and getting to have a community there where we're all kind of working together. And I got to hand it to them. The questions are just good, and they're good in a very specific way. We often pride ourselves on taking a layer off and going deeper, and when we bring out that nuance, just like we are ripping on people for being binary, we say, hey, no, it's not like that, it's deeper than that, and then we talk about it. But then the questions we get are often a layer after that. They say, no, I heard exactly what you're saying, and then this came up. We go, oh my god, thank you for stretching us even further. And I just want to say thank you to all those patrons and that community for pushing us further. And I think we're exploring something really cool. So please join us. Please sign up and be there. And even if you can't make it on that specific day, you get to listen to the, I don't know, 10 or 15 hours of content now we have built up from all the classroom recordings. So if you like the podcast, you're going to love those classroom recordings. And we would just love it actually even more if you joined us and become part of our community. We will always answer your question no matter how long it takes. So those are my announcements, Tim. Oh yeah, we're on YouTube too. I already said that, but it's it's not always brand new content, but it's chunked up in a different way from the podcast you're listening to with cool video to try to distill some of these messages into quick 3 to 5 minutes sound bites. So if you want, check those out. But they're also good for sharing to kind of get those concepts and maybe double down on some of the things that we bring up that we all know are super important and good to send to people. So check us out on YouTube too, Testpiece Climbing.
Yeah, I gotta echo that the classrooms are sick. I mean, I've talked about it every time. I think the classrooms are a very underrated thing that we could offer in the climbing world. Like just to be able to be in an environment like that is, it's kind of like old school for me, like just to be able to sit and talk about climbing, and it helps to know that some people still, like a lot of people still care. And so we don't have like live feedback with everybody who's listening here, but that's a really good way for us to be like, oh, okay, wow, you guys really care about these super deep concepts and they really do apply for you guys, so let's talk about it. And so for me it's great, but also for them I think it's great.
Yeah. Plus one to just that extra layer, that nuance in getting in the classroom, because it can be disheartening when we put out something on Instagram and people just think that they just take like the worst approach to it. They think it's somehow calling them out or somehow saying something has to be a certain way when really we're just exploring the deepest realms of climbing where there really are no cut and dry answers. So yeah, let's go deeper. Let's not be that kind of person that sees a 30-second clip and gets angry about and comments about something they don't really know about. Okay,
Yes.
uh, back to the hardest climbing that is being done right now. Back to just quite a start for 2024, and I feel like we got a little, I don't know, you and me got a little into it, which is interesting about devolution. It's the low start to evolution, which is the center line up Grandpa Peabody. It's got to be one of the most proud lines in
The
America,
world.
if not the world. It's the first thing you see when you drive into the buttermilks. It's tall, it's proud, it's steep, it's on good rock, at least the bottom part. and and Sean added a low start, and he said it maybe clocks in around V16. I talked to a bunch of other people who were either there or have tried it before. I fondled it years ago. I don't really remember, to be honest, because it evolution was hard enough as it was for me. And yeah, I think it's a big deal because it's right there again. It's just I can't believe that these things sit in front of our eyes. And my kind of joke, well, not joke, my serious take on is this question I put on the Spotify poll that I post to you is this the new test piece in Bishop, the new hard test piece? Does it dethrone lucid dreaming? I mean, clearly, also people who, if they hear this, don't get angry at me. Like, it doesn't matter. It's all just a joke, kind of. But to me, it stands out as being a very amazing line. It's straight up the gut of one of the biggest boulders right there, extremely hard, great rock. And it's interesting, again, if you think like 50 years from now, what are people going to go at Bishop if they want to climb V16? Because we all know we all know lucid dreaming is V16. What are they going to get on it, and why has the process not taken that crown away from lucid dreaming? And so, yeah, what do you think about how will devolution stand the test of time, or will it stand the test of time? Where does it sit in that Bishop test piece?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of interesting things you're pointing to, but the most interesting one to me is it's been there. Why isn't it been done already? So naturally, shouldn't we assume that it's the hardest one? And it's like maybe not. And maybe not. I cannot give you an answer, but we can talk about it. And here's a couple of things that I would say. The process was an interesting one for me, to see it not get repeated that much, to see it, yeah, actually in climbing aura, it's not been talked about, but we can assume that people still consider lucid the test piece of Bishop rather than the process, even though the grade is actually one number higher. And I would still argue that devolution, the low start to evolution, might still not dethrone lucid dreaming for whatever reason. And there's a couple of things that I have in mind. The process and devolution are just less desirable to climb for a lot of people than lucid dreaming, for whatever reason. There's a couple of reasons that I think, but for whatever reason, and the reasons that I think is that the highball factor of evolution and the process are a little bit more off-putting. The style of which they go at and the difficulty of which they go at. I would say that lucid might even be one of the not easier, because I don't think it's actually easy, but some of the less followable climbing, the style of the climbing that you kind of finish out on, it's more balancy and like kind of lower body movement base. Whereas evolution, you pull the lip, and at 20 feet, when your feet are at 20 feet high, you're still pulling like pretty aggressive movements, even if you're tall. Um, and so I think that has a huge factor in terms of like, I think, but also I've had a couple conversations where I think people put too much weight on that. I think like if we put less weight on that or just thought about that less, then maybe we would see more people try the process again and more people try devolution. And so it's really hard to say because it's kind of just based on what people have done. But I have a couple of takes in, the highball factor is one of the biggest takes. Style
That's
is a huge
interesting.
take.
And I know Daniel Woods, when he did the process, the top out was, I mean, grade wise, it might be trivial for someone of his caliber, but I think he climbed it to the lip and dropped off
Yeah.
before doing it. Yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
from that video. So it's not totally trivial. And I want to say, I won't name any names. I want to say someone has done that also, where they've climbed to the lip and dropped off. Uh, but I also want to talk about the process for just a moment. That Daniel did it, it broke, it got
Hmm.
glued, and it broke again and was attempted to be glued again, and it just wasn't in a state that.
Hmm.
And now it's been glued again and more, so it's got the rock quality and the original line. It's changed a little bit, so just
But
that's an important
interestingly
part.
enough, I don't
It
know if
still
that
goes.
matters. Like, I don't know if people talk about that as much as they should. Like, if I was interested in trying it, I would be like, it's like a little bit less desirable for me to try it specifically because of the glue factor. But I actually don't hear people talk about that aspect of much, which is interesting.
Sean did mention it to, or I didn't
Okay.
hear it from him. I heard it from where he had been wrapping down it and was less
Uh-huh.
psyched on the glue. And people were like, "Dude, try try Devolution low, try Devolution
I
like,
see.
or
That's
sorry,
cool.
try Evolution low. So I think he was less inspired. I because my hunch is there's a good chance he could have done it, but just for whatever reason it didn't grab him. But maybe we'll hear from him another time on it. But
Yeah.
there's even another line between
Hmm.
lucid dreaming and evolution. There's a
Hmm.
I remember when it was
Probably
first showed.
equally hard.
Yeah, when it was first showed to me, someone said it was like V14, and also the crimps on it are really cool and
They're
bullet. They're
sick.
amazing, but
Yeah.
it's probably like V16 there also, and it's just I don't know why I find this so fascinating, but it's like what are these climbs that people travel the world for and stand the test of time? Like, what is it? And clearly aesthetics is one of them, history is one of them, in some ways like style is one of them. I feel like lucid dreaming and that pinch is an interesting, unique kind of move. And I don't know enough about the devolution, that those first two moves, although I will tell you, Tim, Austin thought that first move is one of the hardest out there. I've talked to a handful of other people that thought that first move is one of the hardest out there. But again, does that mean that it will be the climb that people search out? Do we even know? I would say we don't know how hard it is until 5 years, 10 years goes by, and we see some.
Yeah.
We probably will see some repeats because now it's there. Once someone's broken the door open, somehow like it gets easier, quote
Right.
unquote, which is fascinating. But I don't know, what a
Yeah.
climb though, man. Still
Dude,
psyched
this
on it.
whole this
Good
whole
job,
take is
Sean.
so interesting to me. Yeah, good job, Sean, on sending devolution. But this whole take about, like why I mean, what I think about a lot is like, well, why do people even go and try any of these climbs, right? And so like people's incentives are really interesting to me. I'm not saying this is wrong, but my personal philosophies and my ethics don't really try. I really try not to do this, but I think a lot of people go around to try climbs because of the lore, just because people can't do something, or because it hasn't been done, or because it's really hard for other people. And I would argue that a lot of people go to try Lucid because of Lucid's lore. If you knew the lore of the process, though, I think it'd be just as interesting. I just don't think that many people really understand it. And then they go and they just know the Lucid lore more. Arguably, if you walk up to the Grandpa Peabody, which I have done many, 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 many times over many years, I would say the process or Lucid or Evolution are more pure lines, and they're better lines of the boulder. Like they're much cooler lines.
Agreed.
So it's interesting that people go and assume that the better line is Lucid. You go up and walk up to Lucid though, and you're like, it's actually kind of hard to spot. It's actually kind of hard to spot. So I just think it's interesting.
Still good
I'm
start.
not
Hold. Still a
yeah,
great
it's still
line.
obvious
Yeah.
climbing line, but the lines, when you look at three lines on this one face, like the process is the most epic line for sure.
Dude,
But the evolution lines up perfectly up the middle and has
oh,
this sick top out. Like I
still
don't know,
love
I
evolution.
I
Yeah.
I find that interesting. Why the incentive of why people are psyched on it. I actually would point that most people are probably more interested in that lucid lore, which definitely I was too. I definitely like a lot of the reasons why I said I was gonna try lucid is simply because I thought that I couldn't because other people couldn't do it quickly.
This
You
is
know?
where story and everything is super important. Like
Yeah, yeah.
Lucid had that whole thing with Paul Robinson, and there's some debate around that. I'm not gonna wade into it because
Mhm.
I don't really know. I will say that the I was out there actually the day I did Evolution, which people who are listening who make fun of me for talking about Evolution too much, I'm sorry, but the day I was out there and I did Evolution was right before the process went down. Daniel Woods was climbing on the process. Dan Bale was climbing on the process. Carlo was really vying for the process. I
That was such
think
a cool vibe.
I don't know if Jimmy was on. That was a stack day. Kevin
Yeah,
Jorgensen
Jimmy
was
was the
out
ladder
there.
guy.
Yeah, sure. uh, He's always vying for the top spot there. But it was just there. The process was a a very sought after FA, and it is fascinating to me. I thought that when this goes down, this is going to be one of the most
Same here.
important climbs in the world, and maybe that shows you that rock quality is a big factor.
Mhm.
Where the fact that it broke and crumbled and was a little friable, but it's gorgeous. Yeah, again, it's just kind of fun. Like, why does this stuff not like
Yeah,
what? Why is it not the one? But it
yeah.
isn't, and
I will say though,
what a
that
shame.
being said, it's something I take away from this heavily is kudos to Sean for having his own take, going to Bishop, being like, well, yeah, I guess cool. Like, yeah, this I don't like this one, but sure, I guess I could try this other hard one that I've been hearing about the low start devolution a bunch, and I've gone down there and grabbed the holds a lot too. And I mean, it seems feasible, but it seems really hard. It also seems less desirable for me than to like go find something that has certainty. So good on Sean just to be like, I don't care about the certainty. I don't care about anything else. I'm just going to try to do something that I think I could do that's going to be hard for me. And just to see it do it in style, I think is also cool. I mean, I didn't see the video or anything, but that climb requires style. Like you're just jumping. The moves are huge, and like the guy's not huge either. So like he always does something in style when he has to jump, which is pretty crazy.
So,
Throwback to the Salt Lake World Cup where he won, and just like the most insane moment of all time.
I that was didn't Nathaniel Coleman talk about that as one of the coolest
Oh
things
yeah,
he'd
yeah,
witnessed?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
listen, when Nathaniel Coleman says something like that, always cool. Well, if you haven't listened to the Sean Bailey episode, go listen to it. And on that note of kind of seeing things that aren't certain but going for it, I was hoping that you could wade in a little bit on the project to the right of Trieste. Sean, I had absolute blast talking to him. It's hard to get him to spray, but and I
Mm.
get it. I understand why. It's his style is a little bit more low key. He's just out there doing the thing. But sometimes I want to be able to live vicariously, and so I know that is on his radar. I know he's trying. I know both Sean's have tried it, or maybe trying it right now. Although I think some weather has come in. Do you know anything about that project? All I really know is the video I saw of Rabbitoo, a year ago, kind of working on it. But I know you've put some time in Trieste, so you must have spied that climb.
Yeah, I definitely until Sean were trying it, and I think Matty Hong dropped a video on Mello of them trying it, or like they were in some clip that either Bobby or Maddie made. But they were trying it, and I remember watching the video and being like, "That's a climb." Like I remember going to Trieste a bunch and like definitely looking at the whole boulder and being like, it's, interesting, like easy thing on the left, but also like not that cool. And then the right, I was like, no, this is a bunch of like super horrible holds. And then to watch them like do movements, and then I go again the next time and I'm touching the holds and I'm like, wait, what? Like what were they jumping to? Then I go back home and I ask Nate about the climb, and I wish I knew a little bit more of what Nate was saying. And we're going to ask Nate when he gets on this podcast more about the Trieste project, because he's tried it very recently. He was trying it on a rest day because he was like
He was
messing
trying
up
on a
his wrist
rest
a
day.
bit. Yeah, I know. Well, it's more like he needs to rest the way that he's grabbing the Sleepwalker holds, because they're
Yeah.
really morpho and they really like mess up your wrists. And so trying like more straightforward crimping actually provides therapy to that like type of. It's weird. It's almost like antagonist training.
I'm just,
I would think.
I rest just like everyone else, except for when I rest, I try V17 projects. Okay, go on. Okay,
Um,
yeah, it's to the
the
right of
the
Trieste. Go
Trieste
ahead. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Trieste project is like it's a very short boulder. So I think the way that Nate's described it is like just two really really hard boulder pumps. I'm not gonna say the grade because I don't want to mess up, and because I don't actually remember, but I think they are in the V15 range of movements. But Nate said he almost stuck the hard jump move, which was really surprising to me because I kind of saw it as a move that would be easier if you were shorter.
The small
And
box
Nate's
move.
definitely,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Hmm.
I thought it was
Hmm.
a small box move, but Nate said he was like felt really close and just dry fired and like didn't try it much more. I also thought that it kind of would show us another highlight of another style of climber. So I think like Sean Bailey, Sean Rabbitoo, and like Noah Wheeler are a really interesting build in climbing. And they're not like the Sharma type build, right? But clearly they're showing that they have an ease of like creating any sort of power on the wall at all forms: fingers, lower body, core power. Like their power endurance is like almost always insane. They just look like they're having an easy time on the wall. That climb looked like you almost needed to have that type of strength or that type of mentality to do that climb, which I thought was really cool. Like again, I looked at the climb and I couldn't really read it. It's like one of the first times I looked at a
Wow.
climb and I was like, I can't even read it. Like, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to share with you guys. Like, I just don't really understand a
It just
climb that
just
difficult.
means it's that fucked.
Yeah, I think it's harder than they think it is. Like I think similar to what Nate was saying, I kind of said, and he wasn't saying this in a mean way, but I was saying like I felt really close on Sleepwalker, and he was like, "There's a huge difference between like feeling like you can do it and then doing it." And he was like, "I think you do look really strong on it, but like there's a huge difference to get past that little barrier of like making things piece together." And I was like, "Well, I could use the same argument on the Trieste project actually. Like looking at that, and this is where I have a lot more experience is like little jumpy board style moves, like especially Sleepwalker is just not found. That style is not found almost anywhere, but this style is found far more often. And knowing that style, if you do any moonboard project, you can stick movements in isolation if they're at your limit, but doing another one into that one makes it so much harder. And doing that Trieste project, I would figure, I don't think the stand start would make sense, but if there was a stand start, the stand start would be cooked. and the sit moves into the stand would be cooked. But it's also that style, like I said, and number breakdown wise, it might be similar to other 16s or maybe 17s out there, but I think style is huge. Like Grand Illusion, for example, breaking down like a V12 boulder into a V13 boulder should probably more be V15. But the reason why it's 16 is because in that style, if you're doing a V12 into that style of V13, it makes that V13 that much harder. It doesn't make the V13 V13 anymore. It makes the whole climb V16. That's a really hard
But
math to
Tim, don't you
understand.
actually think? I thought you've already. I feel like people think Grand Illusion is actually V15. But I'm sorry, that
It's
takes
so
away from your
hard.
point. Let's not. I
No,
don't know.
yeah.
Don't let's not get derailed.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I shouldn't even. God, look at
But
me.
feeling
Yeah,
is different. That's the
yeah,
point there. Is that feeling is different than objectivity, right? And so yeah, for me, I guess I could tell you that like Grand Illusion could feel easier, especially if you have good power endurance and if you have that kind of resilience to
yeah,
that
yeah.
style.
Uh,
But Trieste, I don't think would,
this is a
or Trieste
total
Proj.
tangent, but it sounds like you've been spending some time with Noah. I know he listens to the pod sometimes. Did he did did he listen to the one where we said Noah's really good, but we don't know if he will be great? I want to hear his take on that because I felt like
Oh,
we kind of ripped on him a little bit. I shouldn't say we ripped on him, just that like he is so good. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
watching him on Board Lords, I love. I mean, Defying Gravity. I love his style. There's something interesting that he's got there, but we were
yeah,
like, but we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Like, who knows where he'll progress to?
totally.
Did he hear that?
No,
And
I don't
okay,
think so.
you should
But
send him that clip and see what he thinks when
sure.
we're giving him crap. Yeah.
But dude, I'll repeat a take that I've had in the past because I don't. That's not how I feel about Noah. How I feel about Noah is that he's young. He has his own take on climbing, but it could be balanced and colored in a way that might help him reach his potential. I don't think he's doing anything wrong, but he's probably not doing everything right, which is the case for all athletes. And if were to see someone like Noah do everything right, I think he could be one of the best climbers in the world. And I will always stand by that statement. I think a lot of people could be the best climber in the world. They just need to make sure that a lot of things line up, right? But Noah clearly shows like a couple of foundations that some people maybe cannot acquire,
Well,
right?
and that's what we said. It's like there's every indication that Noah could be one of the best climbers that ever have climbed, but that we just don't know because it's
Yeah,
just it's you could look at Sharma at 13 or 14 and he was just on this trajectory, but that's just a trajectory. That's not the Chris Sharma that we've known through the decades doing being
totally.
being Chris Sharma. Okay, uh, that's a thanks for giving us the breakdown of that project over there, or at least what you remembered. And the thing that I just think is so cool is i I feel like there was this era of Switzerland, and I'm sure people are still going to go back to Switzerland, and this is not the time to be in Switzerland this time of year, but I guess I'm just excited to see hard climbing happen in what's my backyard, not just because it's my backyard and I want to see it, but because it's again, it's this different viewpoint. Like, oh, wait, these are just right here and they're V15 or V16 or V17
Totally.
or harder, and they're right here and freaking quality too. And
Mhm.
it's again, it's kind of like a mind blowing thing. It's like, what's this generation or what's the next generation do when they walk around Colorado or I don't know, or Yosemite shit, like clearly there is so much left to be done. It's just every time people think it's things are climbed out or whatever, it's just so wrong. And so I guess I just feel like something's been happening this last year that's really exciting to watch. And literally just in the past couple of months, some of the hardest climbs in the world have happened, and the one of the best crews ever right now is rolling around in Bishop and Red Rocks and just adding things that will probably go down in history as being some of the coolest climbs
Yeah.
that we've seen. So just love this time, man. Just psyched.
Dude, another interesting take, controversial, but I think I don't know, I'm in a controversial mood. I think a lot of the reason why a lot of these stronger climbers are climbing outside more also is because comps are kind of sucking. Like comps are sucking a little bit more and people aren't really interested. Like, dude, a couple years ago, we all used to be, whether we were good or bad, or you were Nathaniel or Sean Rabitou or someone, like we all cared about competing so much more, like so much more. When the NCS season started, like there wasn't a single NCS that all of us would like we would not have missed those for the world. Like just the feeling of going to an event, knowing the setting was going to be bangers, the setting which is going to be only good hard climbs, and you had to be the best climber in the room to win. It was just like a cool environment. And for some reason, that doesn't show up in competition that much anymore, even if you're at the highest level, right? That's something that was sad about. Like, I know I wrote a comment that got a ton of likes. Like, Sean and I haven't always seen eye to eye, and maybe some of you guys are curious about that, but I won't share it. But one thing we do share a lot is that competitions matter a lot, and him not doing it is a huge statement. I think like him not being there right now, because there aren't comps right now necessarily, but I'm curious to see what the next couple years look like. I would love to see comps revive. I would love to see comps bring back that flavor that made us as competitors and as athletes want to go to those competitions and actually show up and be the best. But it's cool that that provides a lot of outlet for rock climbing, and seeing what happens when rock climbing, is has a lot of strong climbers is pretty bad. It's pretty badass. It's fun.
So I know you haven't listened to. First of all, I don't even know if that's a controversial take. That's just facts, homie.
Mm.
Like that is what is going on. Is people are psyched on rock because they're not as psyched on comps. And I know you haven't listened to the pod I did with Sean Bailey, but we get into it a little bit. And one of the things that we said is that I've heard from a number of people that they are psyched that Sean, Zach, aren't going to the Olympics, and that they're like, oh, cool. Like now these guys get to leave a permanent mark on rock climbing.
Totally.
And the other thing that blew me away that Sean Bailey said, I love the Olympics, right? So I'm like, Sean, what did it mean to you when the Olympics came around? I don't know. I don't remember exactly what I said. He's like, oh, I don't care about the Olympics at all. I was like, oh, really? But what he wasn't saying was like, oh, I didn't get in, and so I don't care. Like Olympics suck. He was like, no, I never cared about the Olympics, but everyone was training for that. Like that was the comp. So I'm gonna do that too because I'm a competitor. And it was just this kind of like, that's that mentality of being a competitor, about trying to be the top dog in whatever the thing is. And so even though it wasn't really his jam, especially when he talked about speed climbing, that wasn't the point. It's just like, no, I want to compete. And it does show you how far the pendulum has swung in competitions where you take people who are multiple World Cup winners in multiple disciplines, and they're like, ah, oh, man, like, are you really going to take 9 months out of my year to do this when I'm not even that psyched? And yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah, it sucks. I think for me, I have a lot of conversations with, like for me, it's mostly, lately it's been mostly negative, but I'm glad that we can talk about it in the positive light. Of course, it's so cool, and it actually makes me really inspired. Actually, something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and somebody's been telling me to go out and just like, I live in Vegas, I can just, even though I'm hurt, I can go hike and find boulders and find projects to like get psyched on.
Good
So I'm
idea.
gonna go and do that. But it does suck because I dedicated a lot of my life to competing and would sacrifice significant portions of my year that a lot of people, especially Brennan being my best friend, like he was always rock climbing, dude, like always rock climbing and always inviting me too. And at a certain point, he stopped inviting me because he knew I would say no. And it sucked because the only reason I would say no is exactly what Sean said. You knew that everybody else was training for these comps, so you would go and do that. I think that's a conversation I've been having with a lot of athletes, that you don't need to do that. And in fact, doing that might take away an authentic drive. An authentic drive is maybe the most powerful type of drive. Now, it is powerful to kind of structure your whole life around like specific things without any sort of meaning behind it. And I'm not saying there isn't meaning behind comp training, but you can see that there's a layer there where you're disconnected from your authentic drive there. And I think I've been challenging kids who are competing nowadays to invite that authentic drive even amongst that structured layers. Like, I know you're still going to do it, but can we find something that actually interests you? Because I don't want you to wake up at 24 years old and be like, wait, why did I just do that for the last decade? And like, even though I liked it, like, was it for me? Like, I have no idea.
Your quarter life crisis. Yeah. You're after you compete. Yeah, I do want to point out that there is some murmurs of a new competition league that are maybe in the works. I don't really know anything. I'm not involved, although I kind of want to be, to be honest. But I've just heard some murmurs, and it's just interesting to think if there could be a new take on climbing, because clearly all of these people still want to compete, and they maybe don't want to dedicate themselves 9 months out of the year to a style that doesn't translate as well. Actually, you know what I was just thinking is, as a thought experiment, if Tomoa were to come to Bishop and get on Lucid now, how would he do it? Would he do it like Daniel, or would he do it like Austin?
I think 100% he would do it like Austin,
Yeah,
and I think he would
interesting.
do it with
Okay.
style. Did you
Uh,
know another interesting take, and I think this is a huge reason why we don't this is also controversial in another opinion, but USA climbing's not doing so hot under the eyes. Have you
yeah.
seen the
Any
new
comment?
TC
Okay.
type thing?
Yeah, yeah. I would literally want to ask you for a comment. Can you
Yeah.
kind of set the stage a little bit about what we're talking about?
Yeah, so Mark Norman basically kind of released. Well, Mark Norman's the CEO of USA Climbing, and USA Climbing has released that they're trying to build or are building a training center, a new permanent training center. And the reason why that's significant is because the TC showed up. The TC is a training center. What we used as the US team to train for the last 4 or 5 years, I think, was this leased space in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is why we all moved there, and which is why I moved there. And a huge reason why I moved out was because I was like, this is lame. Like this is not why I moved here. But it was an awesome TC. It was a leased space that moved probably 3 times, I think, a different warehouse
Oh
every
wow, I
time, and
didn't
they
know
didn't want
that.
to do that anymore. Yeah, so they were struggling with money because that's expensive to move. That's a lot of work to move your huge climbing walls and climbing holes over and over again. A lot of resources that you're spending. Um, but anyway, the TC that it's at right now is actually pretty cool. I completely personally disagree with this commercial TC. So basically, what's happening is they want to replace this whole thing that they're doing where they're leasing spaces and just burning money through renting spaces, which is I think fine, honestly. Especially compared to this new TC, which is a commercial gym that they're trying to build within a couple of blocks, I think, of the front. Um,
And the bouldering
and
project, right?
and the
Isn't it
bouldering
like right?
project,
It's
yeah,
like
because it's in
between
downtown.
two of them. Yeah.
It's super, yeah. It's a crazy location because it goes into direct competition with stakeholders of USA Climbing, which is the front. And I'm sure BP has something to do with that. But basically, they're pouring the layer that I disagree with is how they got their funds. So basically, they've released that this commercial TC will cost them $30 million to build, which is an insane
Was it
facility. They're trying
30?
to
I thought it was
build.
15. Is it
Well, they
30?
got 15 from
Oh,
the
they
state,
got
but
15.
they put
Oh
up
my
15. Guess where that 15 million comes from, right? Where do you think that comes from? It's a nonprofit organization, right? That money comes from my memberships, everybody else's memberships, comp fees. They don't pay gyms necessarily. I can't say for a fact that they don't pay gyms, period, but I know of gyms specifically that they did not pay for them to host competitions for USA Climbing, which costs gyms a lot of money,
yeah.
right? And so they're withholding a lot of money that they definitely don't need to spend, which then we're finding out later that this is probably what they've saved their money
I
for.
think they still need to raise another 15 though. I don't think they have nearly enough. I thought they still are, million, like 15 million short. I
I
haven't
think
looked
the
at the
state,
financials. So,
yeah, I just read the climbing magazine whole thing, and
me too.
I
Yeah.
think the state gave them 15 million, and that's also why the front was really upset because the state
Mm.
also gave the front 2 million to develop the front, and they
And
withheld
then
it because
reneged
they
it.
knew that
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
took it back
Yeah.
because or they're putting a pause on it because they want to know that there's no
God.
beef, but there is, right? Like obviously you don't want an enormous really cool training center to open up to your gym. it's
Well,
gonna it's gonna provide competition.
so yeah. So the stuff I read was this idea of making a cool venue to host World Cups and big competitions, and almost the what was it, the Innsbruck gym was like an inspiration
Yeah,
there
the
of.
KI.
And so I think that there's something really cool there, and that there's a side of me that's like, I mean, yeah,
Totally.
like let's have a big ass gym. I mean, I'll tell you what, dude, I would fly to go see a World Cup there. I would go. Like
Totally.
I'm I will go there just to watch some cool thing. I will go travel there to experience some mega gym. I want to go to the Innsbruck gym just to see it because I'm that lame that I like indoor climbing even that much that I would go to like see
Yeah.
something like that.
No, it's so sick.
But it's definitely ruffling some feathers, and it's being done in a
Yeah.
way that is deeply upsetting the front bouldering project, and it just doesn't
But
make
also
sense.
all other
Yeah,
climbing gyms,
all
all other
the other
climbing
climb
gyms,
gyms, yeah,
gym owners are
they
signing on
signed it.
letters to send to USA Climbing. Why are they doing that? Because they know that USA Climbing is raising. So I don't think that's the weird thing is that I'm totally agreeing with you. If I was able to go to the TC in Salt Lake, dude, I'm going to Salt Lake to coach some kids. Like we're just going to go to the gyms. Like we can barely even go to the TC. The TC, for all of you who don't know, you need to have certain requirements that allow you to go to the TC and background check regularly. And if you don't have those requirements, like you're not on a tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 US team or a tier 4 team, or I don't know how they do it, but not everybody can go there. And specifically the kids that I coach, some of them can't go there because they're not quote unquote good enough. in USA climbing standards. That's a weird thing that happens. So I can't even climb at that TC all the time.
Well, I
And so
understand why they do
hopefully
that.
that
You understand why they do
I
that, though. Yeah.
absolutely understand why they do that, but it's a rough reality that like even I wanted to go to TC, and a lot of people did originally, and that wasn't able to happen. And so I guess the point there is I would be psyched to be able to have a
Yeah.
TC that we could all go to. I would be psyched to see competitions and know that we're hosting competitions all the time. The thing that we cannot, and so that alone, if USA Climbing said we are doing that, I would be like, oh my god, yes, like I'm psyched. Even if it was right next to the front, I would be like, they'll figure it out. Like it'll balance. I'm sure business will balance there. What I don't agree with is how are they raising funds and how are they going to pay back funds? Because I just understand that $30 million is a lot of money to put in a climbing gym.
I don't
15
understand
million to pay
why it
back
would
to a
cost
state is insane.
30 million. And again, I still
Well, they're
think that
building a
I'm pretty sure they still have to raise 15 million. I'll double check, but it doesn't really matter.
yeah, yeah, I'm
I still think they
curious.
have 15 million to go. And I think that the big thing there is that all the gyms supported USAC
Yeah,
when there was nothing going
exactly.
on, and USAC is the feeder to IFSC, which is the World Cups and the Olympics. So this is all a feeder, and now as it gets more popular, USAC becomes more important, and all the gyms took the hit along the way for years to support them, and now they feel like they're in direct competition by putting up a commercial space in the
Yeah,
middle of a location where the front and bouldering project is. But I guess the devil's advocate here is, but if we know we want this, where they should they open it in Oklahoma? Like
mm,
like what do you do? Like every place where people want to go, there's going to be commercial gyms, and
hmm,
so if and then you can say, well, like no, it just needs to be a spectator oriented place that allows for this hosting. Well, then they can't make enough money, or it's like okay, so we're going to spend like $20 million to generate $0, actually negative.
right.
And then I know that the front chimed in, said something around, and I apologize if I'm getting this not totally perfect, but basically I think USAC and them tried to collaborate to
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
a facility that could both be served by the front, built out in a spectator way, but then it wasn't up to the standards that USAC maybe thought they needed for the World Cup or for the spectating side of things. But that kind of feels bad where
Yeah,
you have someone who's
exactly.
a known operator who says like, hey, like this is what is actually sustainable, right? Like we know, look, we are a successful gym. This is what is sustainable for what you're trying to do, and let's make it happen. I know you'd like to have 1,000 spectators. I'm just making these numbers up, but we can
Hmm,
only do 600.
hmm.
This is what actually makes sense financially, and we are experiencing this. And they go, no, that's not good enough. So middle finger, we're gonna like do it right next to you and do it bigger. And it definitely is not, people are not loving this.
Yeah,
Not
for whatever
happy.
reason, they have never collaborated well with gym owners or stuff like that. Or like, yeah, there's a lot of logical places to go if you have problems like you need another TC. I don't know. There's you could. I always thought that you could open a bunch of small TCs in like big natural city hubs in the U.S. because the U.S. is huge. You cannot just have like. I guess you can. A lot of people are moving to Salt Lake City to go and train at the TC. So I guess realistically, a lot of people can just move to Salt Lake City, but kind of don't need to do that, and that's a really expensive and intrusive approach to other climbing gyms, right? So I just don't like the approach personally, but also I'm curious to understand what assumptions the USA Climbing making that they can make this sustainable, and why aren't they collaborating with other gyms? I think it's just a weird, what you're saying is really the clarity there. It rubs me the wrong way and it rubs us the wrong way as a community, and it
Yeah.
makes it weird to like be a part of USA Climbing as a whole,
And
you
I
know?
just want to take a step back here too, because I want to point out that I think both me and Tim, and we said like we would love to see some amazing
Totally.
facility. Like I want to support our athletes. I want to see our athletes going to the Olympics. I want to see the support that other countries give their climbing athletes. And I think Sean talked about being in Japan and just how much support the government has
Yeah,
placed
yeah.
in climbing, and that supports it, and that matters. I mean, look, it just matters. It
Totally.
matters to have support to climb hard because it's a lot of work. Uh, but the fact that everyone seems unhappy, USAC seems unhappy, the gym seemed unhappy. It's just not exact. I mean, I know sometimes you have to, what is it, break a few eggs to make an omelet, but let's. I hope it gets worked out and figured out. And this is why it feels like sometimes there is room for another climbing league that could be a competitor to
Totally.
IFSC/USAC, and it just makes me wonder. I hope that in 10 years we look back and we see it's all worked out great and everyone's happy. And I don't like, I'll say this, Tim, I know you're an athlete and you've literally lived this, but as someone who used to compete, loves competing, loves climbing, loves outdoor climbing, loves young athletes, I hate talking to guys like Nathaniel, Zach, Sean. Hopefully they don't feel like I'm putting words in their mouth, but that they're not happy, and you, and
Yeah.
they're not happy with the competition scene, because it's one thing to be a little unhappy, like, or frustrated, but this is a theme, man. Like,
Hmm.
this is not just isolated where one person is saying that they're not happy with the competition scene. That makes me sad, dude.
Dude, a little bit of transparency too. Like, there's been a fair amount of competitions that I've gone to that I've either won, got second, or third, and gotten zero money. USA Climbing sanctioned events, national North American Cup Series events, where we've gotten zero prize money. And it's like, we don't go to compete just for prize money, but it freaking helps when I spend $1,000 to go travel, get an Airbnb, drive, spend my time, win out of 100 people, go and compete, and then make $0 back after I spent like $200 to sign up for the damn event, and spend $100 a year on a membership to USA Climbing. Where does that money go, right? And so I want to see transparency. If you tell me, hey, we can only afford to pay you $1,000 because that's all we can afford to pay you for winning, but hopefully this helps you, like, I'm cool with that. But for some reason, to know once I win that I'm not going to get paid, because you're going to assume if you go to a competition, there's a prize, you're going to assume that. But then to find out that I won Vail, the GoPro Mountain Games, you know who paid me my $2,000 check? GoPro. GoPro did. Like, it's not USA Climbing, man. Like, that's where the money is going. And I'm not saying that for a fact, but I'm telling you guys, and like providing some transparency, because no one else knows this stuff. Like, we don't get anything paid back. Like, we don't get any support. Like, only a few athletes who go to the World Cups get some support. I know for like Ross got some invites. He wasn't in the top 3 of US team, and I'm not dissing Ross. I love Ross, but like, he had to pay for all of his trips. He had to pay for them, and it's like, dude, why? Like, you guys clearly have enough money to pay at least for the important things, which is getting your athletes overseas and getting your athletes to be able to sustain competing. Like, none of us want to compete anymore. None of us can compete anymore. It's too expensive. It's expensive to compete. That's so BS. Especially if you're some of the best ones out there, you can't afford to do it. That's weird.
Well,
Super weird.
I think that the financials should be public. I don't look at them because even though I know how to read
They are.
financials
I've
from
read them.
a whole nother life of mine where I
Yeah,
actually used to do that stuff, uh, it's it, so I don't know. I want to be careful where we say that they're, where's all this money go, because I don't I just think though that what you were saying, where clearly it feels like, at least from athletes' perspective, that there's a misallocation of funds, in the sense that at the very bare minimum, there should be money for the athletes doing the thing itself. It's like, let's send our top athletes to do the competition. And even, I would say, even before having a training center, even before any shirts or any of the stuff that just seems superfluous, that should be goal number one, is getting our athletes to the place to do the thing. And so yeah, I don't know. You're not the only one struggling with this, and it makes me sad. Again, I don't want to be too critical. When I look back in history at some of the competition stuff I did, it was some of the most fun stuff that I've done. I think it's really important part of, especially being younger, and sets the stage for what
definitely.
life is like. And I don't know. You know me, Tim. I try not to be too negative on this stuff, but it makes me concerned when every athlete I talk to seems to be bumming.
Totally.
So hope there's something
Yeah,
new
and
coming along the line.
my intent isn't to bash USA Climbing necessarily, but to provide a little bit of perspective and context as to like what is going on in high level climbing right now, right? That's the whole discussion of today. What's going on in high level climbing? And yeah, we could talk about rock climbing a lot, because rock climbing is what we love and it's something that's cool and it's permanent, but also comp climbing and USA Climbing federations, like, that whole stuff has a huge impact on our mentalities and like what we are doing as athletes, right? And so hopefully that's kind of where the context of this conversation really was supposed to
Well,
be about.
Tim, what you basically pointed out, and I didn't know you were going to say this until this podcast, is you're basically saying that keep doing a bad job, USAC, because you're leading to some of the best rock climbing we have seen in the past 10 years because of your lack of support for, yeah. So that's okay. Competition
I will
climbing
not
kind of
confirm or
sucks right
deny.
now, but thank you for getting the low start to Evolution done. USAC climbing / Sean Bailey. Okay, uh, Tim, thanks for sharing what it's like seeing, you know, what these sessions are like with all these hardest climbers. I know you're bumming that you're injured and not, pulling on with them, but that happens, and so I just appreciate you kind of sharing those vibes of what you're seeing, and just love getting to live vicariously. Hopefully, no one was no one was insulted by our gratuitous spray of all the grades and hard climbs. But hey, sometimes you gotta sit behind a desk and you know work your normal job, and you want to hear about what the best are doing in the world. And thanks for bringing that to us, Tim.
Yeah. Well, actually, on a note, you were saying too, I'm still injured, and it's definitely hard for me to climb. But hey, I've been climbing more frequently on my little vert backyard home wall. I've been getting really interested and more excited to post more content, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be on my personal account. So maybe you guys keep an eye out for that. And I'm gonna try to compete. Actually, I'm almost certainly gonna compete at. Speaking of which, speaking of all this talk, I'm probably gonna compete in the NACS in Salt Lake City, which is the North American Cup Series. It'll be, I think, the first event of the series. I may not do more than that one, especially because I'm probably not going to be in shape whatsoever. But I'm going to do that event. I'm happy to share about it and talk about, I do think that I have hope. I think comps are trending in a better direction in terms of style and format, and the vibe is just still cool. So I'll be there and talking about it, I'm sure, at that
Yes.
time.
Optimism. Thank you, Tim. If you're if you're Tim's number one fan, just like Tim is Will Bosey's number one fan, please come out to the comp. Tim will sign your
Hey,
your what would you sign? Like someone's forearm? Like what's a climber thing to get? Just yeah, their
yeah,
shoulders.
you sign my chalk bag.
You sign my chalk bag.
Yeah. I won't sign
Okay.
yours, but you sign my chalk bag.
Tim, you brought up boards. I just got one quick question for you. I've I've actually been psyched, dude. I've been climbing on the board. Oh yeah, my pro tip, dude. I almost forgot my
Oh,
pro
dude,
tip.
give us a pro
Oh,
tip.
that is the most unprofessional thing to do is to not even give a pro tip. I have been I've been climbing on the boards, and I think I've had this pro tip before, but it doesn't even matter, dude. Crew, community, just everything. I went over to my buddy Sander Pick's house. If you know, you know. Sander's a OG and a hell of a guy, and his board is one of the best in the world. Or I'm just saying that because I don't really know, but I'm saying that. And just those sessions with that crew are special. They make you strong. They make you happy. Find that crew, lean into it, and love it. Some of the best times of my life, and just that's my pro tip. Find that crew. But, anyways, when I'm not with that crew, Tim, I'm on my moonboard in my garage, in my sweet, sweet cold garage. That I'm serious. I love that. So cold right now. I'm on the 2016 set. I'm starting to feel spry again. I don't know. I'm kind of ticking, or
Nice.
like I was just kind of getting back in shape, and so I was not getting on those moonboard benchmarks that I haven't done because I want to flash them, or I don't know. Like I want to give them like
Mm,
my good goes. I probably have like basically maybe like 40 or 50 left of all the
wow.
2016, but it's like the 12s, the 11s, the 10s, and a good chunk of the 9s, and those are clearly going to be harder than all the ones before for me to do. But I want to get the 2024 set, and I was just like, I haven't really gotten a chance to be in shape and give that 2016 set a really honest attempt. Do you think I should just bail and get the 2024 set and be part of that new part of that new group that gets to establish climbs, and or should I just kind of bang my head against 2016? What do you think, man?
Ooh, oh, I have two opinions there. I think one of the saddest things that I've run into in all of the Moonboard sets so far is that I have not been able to be a part of that early crew, making climbs, enjoying the early benchmarks and forming them, forming opinions, and because I don't have access to boards when they come out. Right now, I think injured, but I actually do have access to a 2024 set. I can go hang out with Ravioli, and I actually may hit him up this week just to hang out, not to climb. Um, but I want to hear his take on the 24 set and actually have him on this
Yeah, we should.
podcast, which he is actually would be down for. But my personal opinion is you for sure should. I think it'd be a lot cooler. But the second take is that the 2016 set's not going anywhere, and almost every gym will like. There's almost always going to be a gym that probably has it because a lot of people like it. But I guess a third take is I think that 2024 set looks a lot better for you. for you as a climber. I think it's healthier for most people in terms of like hold usage. I mean, Ravioli posted a bunch of pictures of like, because a lot of people were like, that board looks so soft, and he was like, y'all need to shut up. Look at how bad these holds are, and would like show you compared to yellow holds. Some of the blue holds are smaller than some of the yellow holds. Like some of them are horrible holds, but then climbing the vast majority, I guess this is a recommendation for everybody, climbing the vast majority of your climbing volume on more slopey type holds, more like friction dependent type holds, and doing, I think, more like full body movements rather than like the scrunchy. I think the 2016 set tends to climb a little bit more in this like really gnarly, like scrunched up, really like aggressive, pissed off climbing way. Where I think that so far what I've seen is the 2024 set has a lot more flow. I think that it seems better based on what I know about your climbing, Josh. I would say that you would have a lot more fun, and maybe your climbing would get better if you climb on 2024 set predominantly.
I think you're right. I just don't want to bail on 26. Like there's an element of, because it's so OG, I want to know how I stack up, right? Like I want to see, like I look at them, I'm like, oh, I can do these, but I don't know
give
until
yourself
I've done them. Give
yourself a timeline. Like give yourself, because you'll order the holds and it'll take a while for them to get there. And like I would say give yourself like 10 sessions to be like, all right, I'm gonna give as many good efforts as I can to send as many hard
I'm going to need a lot
that I
more
have
than
left.
10 sessions. I'm going to need, I actually heard it's all back ordered too. So it's going to take a minute.
Okay.
I was thinking more like give myself the rest of the season, because it's going to get hot in the garage by
Gotcha.
March or April or something, probably like maybe through
Yeah.
April. Okay, there's
yeah. I think it's cool to try to do a whole set, but honestly, when you have an opportunity, like as soon as the 2024 set came out, I was like, dude, I want that set so bad. You know, like it's less about like, I think it's really cool to do that 2016 set and finish it off. And if you had nothing else to climb on, like for sure you should do that. I think that's really cool. But if you have the money and the access to get that 2024 set, I see no argument against getting it. I actually see every argument to say to get it.
I'm doing
cool.
it.
Looks badass.
Buy, nice. click order, take my money.
Moonboards, sponsor me. I just got a sale.
I like setting too, so I'd love to add my stamp to that set. I put one climb on 2019. It did not get selected, or it's not a benchmark. It's called the Barnboard. It's probably like V6, V7. And it's really good, man. And Steve Rader, awesome. Number one ranked, at least in the USA, on the 2019 set. He revived it. He climbed it. He posted about it. He said it was good. So everyone listening, go climb that. That's my one set problem on Moonboards. I think it's really good. And so I would love to. Okay, Tim, you convinced me. I'm buying. I'm setting. I'm doing stuff. And that's all. That's your board content for this episode. And yeah, had a blast, Tim. Thanks for joining me, dude. I freaking love it.
Thanks for letting me join you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank
you for letting me join.
Coming straight from Tim's closet. We gotta getting you a better webcam. Where actually the closet is like the hidden podcaster secret, because it's nice and quiet. It got that sound dampening, but it doesn't make for the best YouTube videos.
No, but I came in for you guys so that I don't echo, and so you guys can hear a little bit better.
And you are wearing a collar for the first half. I don't know if I've ever seen you wear a collar.
Oh yeah,
for the podcast.
Like that. I always wear a hoodie, and I was watching some reels, and I was like, dude, I look disgusting all the time. Like I just get up all like, I'm like, all right, let's go podcast, Josh. Like, that's what I look like.
What a great thing to end on, Tim.
Whoops. Tim, all right, guys.
Have fun.
Take care, Josh. All right.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/Testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it.